Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, or whatever time of day it is for you. Good night, good morning. I just don't know. I think we've got Shinobi on here, and he's from a long way away in a land down under, sort of, with the little one, not the big one.
He's the down under, down under.
Yeah, he's the double under in the place in the place of the Lord of the Rings, where they have hobbit towns and Lego rooms apparently in Shinobi's house, which got damaged by the storm. But welcome to the stream. We've got Shinobi, Matt Downer giving speed, and Hemi 4 speed so far commented to us. And Hemi is obviously drinking tonight because he called us gentlemen. All right, Rockin' Alien Head, or Alien Rockin' Head, my bad. Got a little dyslexic there. Well, gentlemen, we have a new brother tonight. We're going to pop his streaming cherry. This is Bandit. Bandit is somebody I met on Discord, and he said he wanted to do a stream, but wanted to have a partner. So I volunteered to bring him on my stream, and I will let Bandit introduce himself.
Hi, my name's Bandit. I'm a finance guy. I've been following a lot of channels lately and just trying to. My goal is to build people up and give them the best opportunity to be the best of themselves. Is my goal. I'm not here to force any of my viewpoints, but try to build people up. So that's my philosophy in a nutshell. Trying to make people better and try to give people the opportunity to take advantage of the situations that they have.
All right. And as you can see, we also have the Emperor of Canada, Chris Mitchell, has joined us. And tonight's topic is going to be planning for a future homestead, or planning and executing that plan for a homestead you've already got started. If any of you have any ideas on that, feel free to call in. I linked or I put the chat in, or the invite in chat already once. I'll do it again.
Actually, that was the YouTube channel.
Well, it's both. Oh, it is the YouTube channel. Well, that's fucking worthless.
Yeah. New Discord.
Let's see.
StreamYard's one.
Guest. Invite a guest. Copy to clipboard. I'm sorry, I'm running this thing off of my phone. I don't have a big studio or anything like that. And even if I was to shill for getting money to get a studio, I wouldn't do it anyways because I don't want to waste the room in my house. Especially when right now I'm not really living in a house, even though I'm in my parents' house, utilizing their air conditioning this summer because it just got too damn hot out there.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I've got two ACs running in this place, and it's not enough.
How old is Bandit? We have a question.
37.
37. Now, Riggs, just because you think he has a pretty mouth and he's in your age range, doesn't mean you can take advantage of the young man.
Riggs is trying to spread around monkeypox.
Yeah, he does that.
No bueno.
No bueno.
Well, Riggs, that would mean that I'd have to have a fucking desk. So, fuck you. So, anyways, tonight we're talking about homesteading, and before the show started, Bandit and Chris and I were talking about septic tanks because and different types of waste disposal. What do you do with your poo?
Everybody poos.
Yeah. And do you want to separate out your pee?
It depends on what you want to use it for, and if it's worth your while or not.
Well, urine, if you pass urine through organic, woody matter, wood chips, bark, that type of stuff, you get all kinds of fun little compounds that Chris Mitchell can tell you about.
Yeah, you don't even have to pass it through a medium. You can distill it out. But your urine is so heavy in water, right, that you need a lot to distill out anything pure enough to be usable, I guess, in a even medium scale. However, over time, it's just getting thrown away, so you might as well collect it. So I mean, even places where like you're having a septic system, or as we were talking about before the show started, a settling area for toiletry waste. The upside to the surface one is the fact that you can essentially separate out solids, from the most part anyway, your organic solids from liquids, just using gravity fed, right? So I mean, I know in a septic system you can separate gray water from larger solid material, and that's fine and dandy too. um, I just find that the septic system, because it's an enclosed unit for the majority of the part, it's also a cesspool for disease and stuff to breed really easily.
That is true. Now, I've got a system that I'm putting in that works like a cow's stomach. It has 4 settling tanks.
Mhm.
2 of them are vented and 2 of them are not. So I've got both aerobic and anaerobic decomposition occurring inside of my system. You do the anaerobic first so you can harvest the methane.
Yes.
And then you have a strong and a weak anaerobic, which is the first 2 settling tanks, and then you go into your aerobic decomposition.
Yep.
And the aerobic decomposition is basically where you're able to put a different set of microbes in there, and it will get rid of a lot of the diseases that are commonly associated with fecal matter.
Yeah. But it will not do anything about dysentery or like scarlet fever or anything like that.
No, but it also helps break down the cellulose that's in your toilet paper in the aerobic portion of it.
Yeah,
and that's why I mentioned the cow stomach, because you actually use cow digestive enzymes in this type of a system, so that you're not polluting the environment with your toilet paper, because it's not spoken about much, but there's actually much more toilet paper residue in the oceans than there is plastic. Everybody's all freaked out about the plastic, but there's cellulose in the oceans.
Yeah, and I mean,
because it's very hard to break down unless you run it through a system like I'm talking about.
Well, as I was stating about most coastal cities and stuff being essentially directly plumbed in to just dump their bio waste into the nearby coastline, you can't within 1,000 kilometers you can pretty much walk the coastline and find toilet paper sticking to rocks.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
And it could have been 5-10 years old. It's gonna go to places and settle and kind of solidify a bit if it gets a chance to stay dry, and it doesn't break down as quickly as you expect. Now, at the same time, it's not as hazardous.
No, right? But nothing really eats it.
No, no, you have the same things microbes and mycelials that will eat wood, like trees. They will eat toilet paper too.
Right, but you can't find those in the sea.
Yeah, no, you won't find those in the sea. There's generally a huge gap between where like coastal line ends and tree line ends. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So they never get there. But at the same time, it is right now the most cost effective way to dispose of a city's waste, right? And like I said, a lot of it, believe it or not, it is not treated at all. It is just direct flow.
It's too
And
costly.
yeah, there
You
are
gotta
some
pipe.
places that, sorry, go
You
ahead.
gotta pipe it. You gotta filter it. You gotta part it out, and then you gotta sell the whole process as a profit to even make it worthwhile. So like the
Yeah,
amount of production you would get out of it, it has to be on a massive scale to even try to make a profit out of it, and a lot of it's got to be run by the government, and you know how they run. They run
Well,
things
that's the thing.
inefficiently.
That's the thing with homesteading is it doesn't have to be run by the government.
No, I know, but I'm
People,
saying the
you
city,
know,
how they
people
process it.
could do this for themselves.
yeah. Here's
And after the 4 settling tanks, my system has um, an aeration pond where I'm going to have tilapia and carp uh,
There you
and
go.
uh, cattails, and also another thing. A lot of people don't really, they kind of think it's a little gross, but if you plant blueberries right by, the trade term, I don't know what the technical term for the aeration pond is a lagoon. But if you plant blueberries around the edge of your lagoon, you're going to have a great crop,
Yep.
and those are delicious. I love blueberries.
it
Yep.
might sound gross, but guys, like the biggest cities in the world use human waste as fertilizer for the outskirts of the cities. So if
And
you were living in places like New York, Chicago, Detroit, go out to the outskirts and see if you find these big trucks dumping off solid waste matter from the sewage treatment plants. You'll see them there almost daily, and it is what it is, right?
Yep.
yeah,
I mean, you got to any little thing amplified by enough people becomes a problem.
Yeah,
and
I
I've got
mean,
mine set up so that it's set up to harvest. My septic system is set up to harvest. I will be making my own black powder. I will be making my own fertilizer. You know, I will be. Um, I've got a separate system set up for my urine so that I can use it for some other processes, including tanning. Because urine, I don't know if you guys know it, but urine is a very good hide tanning compound. Stinks,
there's nothing a tanner won't use.
but by God, it works.
Yep.
And you get the softest, you get the absolute softest rawhide
Yep.
by using the urine tanning methods.
No, I don't think a lot of people realize that, in the end, most companies, factories, they all see it the same way. It is just chemicals. Just because it came out of your body in certain ways, I mean, it doesn't change the fact that you're as good a fertilizer as, fish guts. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So there's no difference between us and anything else that's out there in nature. It's just the way our bodies put chemicals together. It's the way they're used, and it's the way they're excreted. At the end of the day, it just is what it is. You need to accept it, right? I mean, I've seen people fucking trying to make. Well, they got their potassium nitrate from uh, turkey droppings,
Yep.
right? And to make sure that it was exactly what they were going for, they would take the end product and taste it. Well, the idea of putting turkey droppings in your mouth doesn't sound good, You know what I mean? It's just the fact that this stuff is completely harmless. You know, it's just chemicals put together, rearranged, purified, crystallized, and here you go. Even though it came from turkey droppings. No
So,
different.
Bandit, you're into
Yes.
finances.
Yes.
How would you advise the brothers on saving up
Saving up?
to go saving up for your homestead?
Well, under what's going on right now, there is one key benefit with inflation. Anything that's a fixed cost that you have every month, like say a mortgage or something like that, that becomes less and less expensive because you're either making more money or the dollar's worth less, but what you owe is still the same. So debt becomes really easy to get rid of in high inflation.
Okay.
So as long as you have
Like
fixed assets.
I've got, for my children's college fund, I've got I bought the I type bonds,
Okay.
the inflation adjusted bonds.
Oh,
And for a long time, they didn't do crap, but they've been doing great here lately.
Yeah, so you have TIPS, Treasury Insured Protected Security. It's just another word for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that, and ironically, look what people did during like the 70s. Like 70s and early 80s when you had like high inflation. What did everybody do?
Bought land.
They bought land, but land was expensive because interest rates were like 18%. But CDs, which were guaranteed by the government, were 9 to 10%. So you're earning 9% money for free. I mean, granted, it wasn't beating inflation, but still earning 10% free money, and it's insured by the government, so you never have to worry about default risk. It's perfect. But the key thing is, right now, if you have any extra money, and you know that we're having inventory problems, like a case of water now is going to be like, you go to Costco, a case of water is like what, $3 to $6, depending on what kind of water you buy.
Yeah.
In, I don't know, 2 years, that same case of water might be $10. So this is the time to stockpile if you got extra cash. But you can't take the opportunity to take advantage of this stuff unless you are debt free, have a plan, have an actual house or homestead, have property. Like, you can't take advantage of any of this stuff if you have debt. If you're worrying about
That's
18%
very
credit
important,
card debt,
gentlemen. Debt free. You got to be debt free.
that's goal number one. Goal number two,
Well,
I would save about 2 years
here's the
worth of
thing, though.
expenses. Yeah, go ahead. Chris, go ahead.
Nope. Looks like Brandon's lagged out.
No, I'm here. I'm just sitting very still. People that hunt can do
Most
that.
people right now can't afford the debt that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon, you're
So,
lagging out. Oh, he's back. Okay.
yeah, if you can't, the thing is, most Americans have between like 10 and 25 grand in credit card debt, which is insanity because you're paying 18%. Like, you start really doing the numbers, you're completely debt screwed. You're a debt slave at this point. So the only way you can get out of being in debt or enslavement is work. So when you look at just a simple math equation, debt equals money borrowed plus interest. Well, the only way you can pay off interest is work. So if you go looking at anytime you take a debt or use a credit card, you should realize I'm paying the payment back and work. Extra work that I need to do now to pay off that debt.
And work equals time, gentlemen.
Correct. That was the next thing I was about to say. So there's only, you have 8 hours of sleeping, 8 hours and then you have basically 16 hours in a day to actually do work. Okay. So this is where you have to monetize the best stuff that you can and start figuring out ways of monopolizing your skill sets. So, and your assets that you have. So, like you're talking about blueberries. Okay, what can I do with blueberries? And I have to preserve them because they are a good that's going to spoil. So maybe, for example, I would personally get a what's called a heating blender. It's called a cooking blender. Sorry, and it's used for making soups, but it's great for making jams. You just stick the blueberries in, you add a little pectin, and bam, you got jam. You can you can can it, and then you can sell it. And guess
Or
what?
if
If
you're
you
a
can't
fat
sell,
bastard like me, you put in a cup of sugar too.
correct. But what I'm getting at is you just created a trade item that you can trade for someone else. And the even better benefit is, say you have kids, okay? If you have kids, now you could teach them the skill and they can start their own business when they're young. And then you basically just changed your familiar wealth throughout your whole entire family has now the projection of actually being debt free for future generations. You just solved that problem all by monetizing assets that you have. And that's the key thing you need to look at. What do I have and what can I monetize?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons for my children's college funds. I chose the bonds over the CDs is because it's tax free when you use it for education.
Yep, and depending on what state you're in, if you get state, like say you're in, we'll just say use the crappy state of California as the example. I'm not in California. I'm just saying in general. If you bought like a California, you know, road bill, then they needed to raise the money through a bond. That's state tax deferred. You don't pay any state taxes on state bonds. So that's a good thing to realize too. You only have to pay federal taxes. And bonds make a pretty good cash flow because it's guaranteed payment every, month, 6 months, or yearly, depending on what bond you pick. So you can actually set yourself up pretty well with, if you're not getting a paycheck, you can use bond like an annuity, where you're getting constant payments every so often, so you can start paying your bills. It's basically you can use bonds as like a self-retirement in a sense, using the interest payments as the payments you're living off of, which
Yep.
is basically how an annuity is run. So it's just stuff like that to think about.
And you
But
don't have
it's
to pay the shysters at the annuity place.
correct. And then, yeah, and annuities, anytime you have to deal with a contract, that's when things get kind of iffy, because most of the time you don't have an attorney with you, and that attorney is basically their attorney, and their attorney basically does everything on their self-interest and try to screw you out of whatever it can. So I try to stay away from contracts the best I can. But that's just my personal opinion. I don't like annuities because there's better options out there.
Yes, there are. I had some friends who won a bunch of money in a lawsuit, and they were idiots, and they had to keep renegotiating their annuity because they would spend more than they would get, and since they were too lazy to work, they wound up going broke.
Yeah. So the key thing in finance is it's really really simple. Never touch principal. If you can live off interest, you will never be poor. That is it's really that simple. So if you have like a if you have like $1,000 bond, for example, okay, and you're getting paid $10 in interest, that $10 needs to be what you're living off of. Because once you start hitting principal, you're losing money. Because you gotta count in inflation's gonna take my money away. The cost of living increases are taking my money away. Taxes are taking my money away. Um, life events take my money away. Shit hits the fan. That kind of stuff happens. Your toilet breaks, all that kind of crap. So the moral of the story is there's two things in finance that everybody needs to realize. Live off interest, the rule of 72, which is basically take the interest percentage, divide it by 72, and that's how long it takes to double your money. And finance is really simple. It's all about doubling your money. So if you have 10% divided by 72, it's going to take you about 7.2 years to double that money using 10% interest. And the last thing is risk versus reward. The more risk you take, the better reward you should demand. And never put all your eggs in one basket. You follow those quick things, you'll never be poor. And live below your means. That's probably the last one. That's the toughest one of them all.
And the most important.
Well, the thing is, life happens where you might have to go above your means just because of life. But yes, the key thing is most people don't have a income problem, they have a spending problem. That's the biggest, because income can only get fixed really two ways. You either give up your time and get an extra job, or you have to get better skills so you can demand a higher paycheck because you have a skill that people need. Now, with the prepping community, this is where you're kind of designed uniquely to take advantage of this, because as a prepper or homesteader, you're going to have to develop all these skills that you don't have right now. But when, shit hits the fan and everybody collapses and people are wondering how to eat, how to can, all that kind of crap, how to, garden, even garden's not even an exact science. Like, all this stuff takes skills and you don't learn it overnight. You got to just do it and trial and error and everything else. So having these skills is what gets you tradable items. Like, if you're a mechanic and your car breaks down, I don't care if you have your only slice of bread and you need to go somewhere else because you need to get insulin and your car breaks down, I'm going to demand that bread if I'm hungry, and you're going to have to go without food because you need to get insulin. So having the skills is like, I mean, not to pull like a nerdy, like one of those card games kind of thing, but the more skills you have in your inventory, the more stuff that you have options to, the more quivers in your hat that you can actually pull out and use to trade items or get what you want. Because most of the time when things are bad, you're trading skills and you're trading your time for something else, someone else's skills and time. It's like, I live near the Amish, like you can go in, if you do work, like my family, a lot of my family members live in upstate New York. They work with the Amish up there, and they're lumberjacks, and they go in and they'll cut trees down, they'll build bridges, and they'll trade them for like half a steer of cows. So they never, at every single moment, they'll have like 3 cows worth of meat in their freezer. They'll have like 2 freezers full of meat. They're never gonna have to worry about eating. Eating is not their problem, and they have the hardest thing to have is protein. That's the hardest thing to have on a homestead, because you can get almost anything else, carbs, all that other stuff is easy to get. Protein is the hardest thing to find. So if you can find a way to maintain a good protein source, you're golden, and you have a very, very high trade item.
Yep. Now I've got to address something in chat. Hemi 4-Speed is recommending people ride the CC, and I can't endorse that message. So, Bandit, do you know what the CC is?
Yeah, I know what the CC is.
Yeah, so
that only works for women. Let's be real here. That doesn't work for guys. Well, it could work for guys, but not the way you want it to work.
Well, you're riding a CC unless you're into the cock. I mean, yeah, it's probably not working out for you.
Well, even then, there's still gay men represent a small part of the population. You're not going to be satisfying all the guys out there. just saying.
So don't listen to Hemi 4-Speed. Stay off the CC.
No, that's not going to do you any good. But yeah, but he might be also. He has a good point. He also might mean credit card instead of CC.
Well, yeah, he does mean credit card, but that doesn't fit my joke.
Oh, I know. But motivation, like I try to look at trying to do generational wealth through homesteading, and the best way you can do that and to change your family trajectory is learning skills and finding ways to monetizing that skills and creating businesses to monetize that. So like you were saying, you're going to have carp and tilapia. So you might think about doing an aquaponics system in a sense, because it would be a closed system for you, just saying in general. So if you went that route, you would actually have protein and you'd have crops all in the same closed system. Or you can eventually, sell the fish out to people and then use that as a business platform. And you could sell that to, restaurants right now. You can sell matured tilapia out there because it's a desired fish. And there you have a side hustle right there. So if you need like gas money, I could sell fish.
Exactly. I've got a bunch of trees on my property. I'm planning on building a wood gasifier eventually.
Yeah.
So that I can, you have that as both for heating and running my automobile, the syngas that's produced off the gasifier, heating, cooking, and all that.
You got to be very, very careful with that, though, because I know, depending on your state, you probably already know this, but depending on your state, you might not own the land assets. You might just own the housing assets of your property. You might not own the mineral rights.
Oh, I have land, I have water, I've got mineral rights.
Okay, but I'm just saying there's a lot of states out there that kind of, like most of the liberal states, they don't allow you to control your mineral rights. And you, like for example, in New York State, if you find gold on your land, it doesn't matter if you have mineral rights or not, it belongs to the government. It goes right to the state.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. So you got to really know your state laws.
You also got to give a fuck too about that bullshit.
I know. Well, I'm saying.
I guarantee you, if I found gold on my property, I wouldn't tell anyone.
Oh, trust me, I agree. But what I'm saying is, it's one of those things like you got to pick and choose what battles are important. Like, do you really want to have daddy government going after you? Like, in a sense, like, is that hassle worth your while? You got to make that opportunity cost. And the cost benefit.
I prefer to go after daddy government.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying, like, or otherwise you end up like Shakira, where they go after you 10 years later, and now you got to pay all the back taxes, and you're probably going to go to jail for 10 years, just like Leslie Snipes. I mean, the government doesn't care, especially when you're in times right now where the government's bankrupt. They're going to try to squeeze as much money out of you as possible. So you don't want to be a target. You want to be underneath the radar. That's my whole point. Like, you don't need them going to your property and saying, "Oh, wow, you didn't pay your taxes, but you went to the homestead. You're not allowed to collect rainwater in the state. That's another fine." And they'll just like screw you over.
Government applied laws only apply when it's convenient. So here's the thing.
I'd also like to welcome. Sorry, Chris, just a second. Welcome, Indy. He's been sitting there patiently, not saying anything, which is very unusual for Indy. But welcome.
Well, sorry I'm late. I was out hooking up the bush hog.
Oh,
all right.
I got about 10 acres to bush hog tomorrow.
There you go.
So what's up, brother Indy?
Oh, I'm just trying to learn about this homesteading shit.
Well, you probably know as much about it as anyone.
Yeah.
Now,
another thing that people don't think about, they think about, I've got to grow my own food. I've got to, a lot of people want their own electricity.
Mm-hmm.
But, they don't think that there's things on your property that you can distill, or you can
did you say
modify some process in some way to power your vehicles as well. I said distill, yeah.
Yeah, did you say distill? Like vodka?
I did.
Vodka.
Well,
yeah, if you can vodka too.
Yeah.
Here's a little secret. If you don't drink it and you don't produce it to drink, you denature it in some way after you distill it. You can run a still, and you're not going to have to pay the crazy taxes because there's an ethanol exemption in the federal tax code. If you're making your own ethanol, you don't have to pay taxes on it, and you've got, with a little bit of effort, you've got free fuel for your vehicles.
Yep.
You can also use that extra fuel to run a backup generator in case, the sun's not shining and your solar's not giving you enough juice, or the wind's not blowing and your wind generator's not giving you enough electricity. You've got to approach electricity as well as your fuel sources on a multi-pronged attack. You can't rely on any one thing.
No, I actually think solar would be like the last option I'd want to go with. If I could, like, I would just pick where I want to build my homestead. I'm not buying land that I already own. You know what I mean? We own the land. The fact that the government leases it to us or sells it to us is a fucking overstep right there. You carve out a homestead for yourself somewhere in a nice private location, and I guarantee you 10 times out of 10, most likely anyway, no, you're never going to see anyone. You know what I mean? You might have the occasional fucking hiker or something pass by, but you're never going to see any government officials out there. That's for fucking well sure. If I were to set up my homestead, the biggest thing I would look for is a natural water source that flows well. It doesn't have to be huge, a monster river or anything like that. But if you've got water flowing, even in a channel that's, say, like 150 gallons a minute type of thing, that you can even bottleneck, you've literally got your best power source right there.
Yep, 100%.
Right. Hydroelectric is the best.
It is.
Well, it's not just that. You can use water power to basically make any kind of engine work. You can use water power to make a hammer, make it like a steam piston. Like, what you can do it with running water can't be underestimated. Like, you can make it so you could pound, like, to make bread. You pound the wheat to make bread. You can use it to pound to get a piston going. You can use it to do a windmill, to grind stuff. Like, power, there's so much, and the drinking source. So the hardest thing you're going to find on a piece of land, is going to be the water source. And then the second thing is going to be, is the land good enough to be serviced for growing crops? Is it the right kind of soil?
Well, I mean, you can turn pretty much any type of soil into farmable soil. But tell you what, I don't know if I have pictures, but I can get you some pictures. I literally had my yard turned over with a rototiller, and it is producing fucking food for me right now. It's not the best. It's not the biggest. The soil is, mostly sand. It's still getting lots of weeds, but that's first year. Within 5 years, you can turn desert sand into perfectly farmable soil.
Well, also,
but most soil out there is going to give you food right from the get-go.
And also, you got to look at the nutritional value of the food you're getting. If you get a small tomato out of your garden, is better than 2 big tomatoes at the supermarket.
Correct.
Yep. Yeah, that stuff is picked when it's so fucking green, it's not even funny. I mean, a lot of times Sorry, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, a lot of times when you get produce out of a store, it's a hybrid, right? It's genetically picked and blended with other species of that same fruit or vegetable to produce a larger, perfect looking fruit or vegetable. If you've seen the amount of fucking produce that literally gets tossed by look, just dropped by look you would be fucking amazed. Because
Oh, I
it's
know.
like 40% right there. 40% of all pears, apples, carrots, everything. It's all by look, and they say, oh, well, this one doesn't look perfect. Give it a fucking toss. It's going in for fertilizer.
That's why I like going to farms when they have that giant pile of like seconds. Like you have apples or any kind of fruit, they have the pile of seconds, and it's like you can get like a bushel of seconds for like,
Fraction.
$15.
Yeah, a fraction of the
Yeah,
price.
And
fraction
you
of
know
price.
what you do with your seconds?
Make
You don't.
applesauce.
You make applesauce. You make apple cider. You make
Mm-hmm.
jams. It's
Whiskey.
it's a beautiful system.
I would make cider too because it won't go bad as long as it's bottled.
Yeah, but I
Well,
mean,
sometimes
a lot of these skills.
sometimes you want it to go bad. You want that hard cider.
Yeah.
Little applejack. You want that. You want that vinegar because apple vinegar is awesome. I love it.
Most
What was that,
of
Andy?
those,
That cider will get to you.
Yeah.
most of these skills, though, we used to all have, right? Then we fucking basically bastardized everything, mass produced everything, and everybody went to fucking other trades. This used
Well,
to
I
be
learned it from my
the day-to-day
grandparents
life.
who all lived through the Great Depression.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm same thing with me. Well,
Yeah, you take those people and throw them into the Great Depression, take people from today, no matter how educated they are, and throw them into a Great Depression, they're fucked.
Oh,
Well,
they're fucked.
They're fucked.
it's designed to be fucked because if you think about it, Great Depression, everybody knew somebody that was a farmer. It doesn't matter. I don't care who, even if you were in the freaking cities, you still knew people in the suburbs that, or even the rural city limits. There were farms in like the 30s. Now you have to go freaking 50, 60, maybe 100 miles out of the city before you can find a decent sized farm that's not owned by, you know, Soros or Bill Gates. So
Yeah.
the thing comes down to what people did is they they basically save their time and then mon you know basically put their future in harm's wrist in order to live a simpler life. So that was the price they paid, and that's what we have today. Because honestly, with the amount of people on the planet, if it wasn't specialized, if everybody was just homesteading, one, there wouldn't be enough land, and two,
Yes, there would.
well, I'm
Yeah, there
saying there
would.
wouldn't
There's
be.
57. There's 57 acres in Canada per person, and I'm cutting out the Rockies and the coastlines.
Well,
57 acres per person. It's
I was saying farmable
7.5 in
land.
the U.S. Yes, farmable land. I'm cutting out the mountains and the coastline, and I'm leaving a big percentage that is just like unusable. 57 acres per person.
If properly
2.5.
managed.
Yeah, 2.5 billion acres in Canada. Cut out the 500 million, right? And it's 38 million population, 57 acres per person. I could carve out 57 acres for myself, and so could everyone else if we wanted to. Now there'd be no room for growth. So, and trust me, 57 acres doesn't sound like a lot. It's fucking massive.
Oh, God.
How many
Yeah.
hectares is 57 acres? Like, that's massive.
Oh, hectares are big.
Yeah, hectares are huge. Hectares are
I used to work with a guy named Hector.
Yeah. But yeah,
I mean,
if you give every person in Canada and the United States 2.5 acres for their family, right? So this is you, your wife, and your children. And then you leave 2.5 acres on each side for future generations. So one's going to be your children's, and your one's on the other side is going to be your grandchildren, right? And then when you die, your great grandchildren take over your property, obviously, because we do replace each other, right?
mm-hmm. Yeah, but
You will still have space in between the next person, and
like,
nobody would have to worry about fucking the amount of land they have for producing not only their own crops and like come on, what's the other one?
Land rights?
No,
Crops?
livestock. So you would
Yeah,
have
okay.
plenty of room for your own crops, your own livestock, and you'd still have room in between to grow extra and sell that to the people who don't want to go out and do it.
But
There's
I'm just
plenty
saying,
of land.
you're looking, like, prime example, like, I'm not gonna dox myself, but like, my parents, or I wouldn't even say my parents, my family tree has been in this country since like before the 1600s, like early 1600s. Like, I have the land deed from the original person from my state. Like, they got it from that person. Okay. The reason why the farm doesn't exist anymore is because of government domain. They just eminent domained it, and that was it. And that happened in the 70s. So
What
like,
power does the government have?
the power of the
They can
basically the
steal
police.
anything they want.
Yeah, they can eminent
They
domain.
have the
I've
power
seen it.
you give them.
True,
Yeah.
but I mean that goes in the whole argument of the social contract and everything like that. But I'm just saying in general, like, if the government wants your land, it's going to take your land.
If the government wants my land, the entry fee is your life. So let's say you
Hell,
work for the
if
government.
a private company wants your land, they can eminent domain you.
Yep. It doesn't matter what they have on paper and what they've agreed with the other corrupt bureaucrats out there. If you want to come take me off my land, the entry fee is your life.
Well, that's what they did to that rancher out west. Yeah.
Are you
The
coming?
BLM.
But that's what also happened with Waco too. All that stuff is about.
Yeah,
Waco is eminent domain.
And how many fucking people died in Waco?
All of them.
No, how many like did they take out like 3 or 4 officers or feds?
Yeah, but it cost them 70.
That was the feds doing that. The feds wanted to kill them anyway.
Thank you, Janet Reno.
And what was the other one? Ruby Ridge. Ruby Ridge was probably one of the most disgusting things that I'd ever fucking seen in my life, because if that informant was literally setting him up to be a fall guy, and they took it and said, "Yeah, we'll take your specifically created scenario to where he committed one of our felonies, right? And we're going to go in there and fucking take him out." That should show you the level of the government that you're willing to still serve. See, we've talked about this a few times over the last week. We now police ourselves because we believe that the government is God. And they believe it now. That's why they're doing what they're doing, and they can get away with what they're getting away with. Well, that needs to come to an end.
Well, they're doing what they have to do. It's simple. It's all about the crash of the welfare state. So they're playing a Ponzi scheme that's coming to fruition at this point.
Yeah,
and
it's coming.
The government has a choice. They either take the guns away, and they'll have a subdued populace to a degree, or they're going to be like Mussolini, and all the politicians are going to get hung because there's 4 or 5 guns for every person in the United States or something like crazy like that, and they're done because there's 230 million of us, and there's only 10,000 politicians in the whole country.
Yeah,
I don't think there's that many guns because there's been a lot of boating accidents.
Yeah, there's been a lot of those.
Oh, I understand.
When your citizens are willing to police themselves, right, and you've got them so indoctrinated that they police themselves, half the battle's won.
Well, then you have to talk about.
There.
But then you talk about at that point, the whole social contract that everybody has, in a sense, all goes away. And then you get basically anarchy at that point. So, like, you're going to get anarchy either way. Like, the net result of government collapsing, or we sticking it to the government, either way you get anarchy. The question is, how are you going to prepare yourself for when that happens?
Oh, you mean like
Homesteading.
what we're going through right now and have been for the last 30, 40 years,
Well, it
it
still
isn't
hasn't.
anarchy.
No, it's not anarchy yet because like the summer of love is going to be like what we're going to wish was the good is the good part of life. You know what I mean? Like the summer of love that happened 2 years ago with the whole Saint George Floyd. I quote. I'm just saying like
Sober for 3 years.
yeah, sober for 3 years. Yeah, exactly. Um, my whole point is that whole $2 billion worth of damage and about 60 people dead. That is nothing compared to when people are depending on welfare don't get their welfare checks.
You think I don't know that?
No, I bet you everybody on this channel knows that.
Everybody knows that.
I
I can't wait for the welfare system to collapse.
But I'm saying
I
that's
am
when
so
you're gonna have
sick of
true anarchy.
my whole life. My whole life I've been carrying those dead beats on my back.
Dude, we've all had a boot on our neck since the day we were fucking born. Half of the laws out there, if not over 75% that are on the books, are literally meant just to keep fucking extracting resources from you and putting the fear of God in you simply to keep the government system going.
I forget the book, but there was a book about laws, and they say like the average person breaks between 8 and like 15 laws a day
Yeah.
because there's so many
And you
laws on the books.
don't even know it.
I don't
Yeah,
doubt
you
it.
don't
You don't
even know it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine
Look at
Riggs.
the. Well, Riggs breaks about 20 laws a day, but indecent exposure is.
he's a big guy.
We all know that one.
But back to the planning of your homestead. Now, in Chris's world, you can just go take a place. But in the United States, if you tried that, you're going to jail. So
No,
you've got to save up to buy, or you've got to find some place you can get land for cheap or free.
Or another philosophy to look at is this: like, if you are so like you're in debt and you're like, oh my god, I'm living in an apartment and I don't know what to do and I'm worried about my food source. Like, we're talking the worst case scenario. You're in a freaking city. You're worried about your food source. You're trying to save to get out of the city, but you're working a deadbeat job and you're taking an extra shift. So you're doing your best to get out of the situation. So what are my options at that point? So a lot of people, I would start guaranteeing my food source. So you can start working on like food co-ops, which a lot of businesses are starting to offer, which I find a little scary at this point, but a lot of businesses are offering co-ops that you can go into, and they'll work with local farms to guarantee your food source. Now it's more expensive than buying from the store, but you're building that relationship with the farmer. So like, if the farmer's going to have to sell his food, and you're actually supporting him, and you're upfronting your food, and they're sending you boxes of food as payment back, you're actually building a relationship. You actually can use that relationship to survive. So that would be my recommendation for people that are, trying or still in the cities and trying to get out and are not as far along as the people on this chat. But
what I was going to say is, in my state and in quite a few of the other Midwestern states or flyover country, they actually have homesteads that you can get for free. Because I live in Kansas.
Okay.
And we have a whole bunch of little towns that are dying, and they don't want those towns to die because you got to have people. You have to have people there to support that government infrastructure. So what does the government do? It offers free land.
That's exactly what Canada did fucking back in 51? They offered free crown land, government land, what they called government-owned land, to any settler willing to come here. They would give you a little package and be like, will you like to live here to help build a homestead and build a community? And people who just fucking came off the boat were like, okay.
That's what they did in the United States as well for a long time. My all my relatives came at the beginning of the 20th century,
Okay.
and they were all going out and homesteading land. They homesteaded from New Mexico all the way up to North Dakota. Different places, different ones of my relatives. You used to be able to go out and get free land. Well, you still can. You can't get a square mile like my great grandfather got. But
square mile?
Yeah. They would give
nice.
you
a fucking nice chunk.
They would give you a section.
Yeah. That's a nice fucking chunk.
Right.
But if you're talking about land, like if you're picking land, like there's things to start thinking about. Like, is there road access? Like, is there, because a lot of land might be landlocked by other people's properties, and then you have to have like easements and stuff. So
you have to watch out for zoning.
You gotta really. It's not as simple as just buying a piece of land. You gotta visit that land. You gotta know the community. Like, you could be like, just to quote a movie, but like, I'm just saying, like, you go to like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you don't belong in this town kind of stuff. Like, you gotta go to that area. You don't just buy a piece of land and say, oh, that's good for me. You gotta know the community. You gotta research the land. You gotta be an asset to that community. And a lot of homesteaders, when stuff goes south, I really think that you guys should really look into the Hutterites and how they run their communities, because if you look at how they run their communities, it's basically exactly what a small community would be and how it should grow and how it should manage. And Hutterites are basically a Mennonite version of, it's like a light Amish in a sense, but they believe in technology, but they only keep their communities 150 people, or 150 people, which is like, what, 15 or 16 families, and that's it. And then if it grows, they basically buy another group of land, and they move half that population to that land, and then they grow from there. So like, it gives you a firm layout of what to do and how to form like an agricultural community, and it's all out there. So like, I'd recommend you guys looking into them, because it basically gives the blueprint that people like TFM talk about, but it's the logistical real blueprint that would make a lot of sense. But he doesn't seem to talk about it that much.
I didn't know you guys had Hutterites in the U.S.
Yep, they're in Upper Kansas, South Dakota, North Dakota, and then this Canada.
Yep, they are around here. That's for sure.
I didn't know
So
that.
They're not just in Upper Kansas; they're all over.
Does the women still wear dresses and bonnets and things?
Yep.
Yeah.
Really? Hey.
And you'll see the families running around, and they're all wearing homemade clothes. It's another
no
thing.
shoes. And no shoes.
Oh, they've got shoes.
No, they have.
You can't go no shoes.
Damn.
But the thing is, how they view technology is they view technology as they don't use it as for pleasure. It's more of like a means to the end. If you want to learn something, if you need to learn how to fix something, you can research it. If you need to sell stuff through a marketplace, they'll use that kind of end. But they don't use it for pleasure. They don't use it for phone use. They use it for legit reasons. So and it's a good way of, and they have, which I think is probably one of the best things out there. They have communal dinner, where they'll have the whole community have dinner in a giant hall where you can all talk to each other and you can build those interpersonal relationships.
Yep.
And that's
except for men are on one side, women are on the other.
Correct.
You're absolutely right.
What?
Yeah.
But that's the important thing, because if you build those relationships, that's why you need a community. Bob comes up to you and says, "Hey man, I have all this extra corn and I don't know what the hell to do with it. It's rotten here." And you go, "Hey, I could turn that into oil or into ethanol for you, and you can run your tractor off and save you some money."
Yeah. And then we can both feed our pigs off of it.
Yeah. Correct. Or the guy goes up to you and is like, "Man, my cow just died, and I don't have the means to store it. I can butcher it, but hey, I got a free 800-pound cow that I got to deal with. Does anybody
Yeah,
need free meat? Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. Like it's that little kind of stuff where you go, hey, I remember, Sue did a favor for me, and they were saying before that they need some meat. I'll repay Sue with some favors, and that's how my my sister does things with upstate with her husband. Like they trade with the Amish, and that's how they do it. No one deals with cash up there. It's straight up, you know, they have
barter.
lists. It's not just, but it's lists and it's all handshake stuff. So I go in and I'll build a bridge for you, but you're gonna have to pay me like 2 cows, and maybe I'll pick out the cows, and then in the spring when they're ready to the herd's ready to be cold, I'll go in and pick a cow out. I mean, all that stuff is written down in books, and it's all honor code, and it's all old school handshake stuff. Like none of
Yeah.
it's cash based anymore, and
But
that's
Bandit,
the,
that's a
that's the key.
community.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
that's why you need a
We
community.
lost community fucking decades ago.
That's not necessarily true.
Well, that's what I've been saying, and we need to fucking claim community.
Well, the only way you can. The problem is, by design, our humanity has been stripped from us, and our lust for individuality has, come to the point when we're so individualistic that we can't even tie our shoes at this point, like as a society. So the
As a
only way,
society, that may be true, but individually, you can go out and make those connections.
correct.
I moved to my place in December, and I've already made a connection for my beef. I've already made a connection for my eggs. Like, I'm going to be, as soon as the fall comes around and I finish my fence, I'm going to have goats, and I'm going to start making cheese.
There you
I
go.
have people already, even though I haven't made a single bit of cheese, already want to buy it.
Another simple one is rabbits. Rabbits make a pretty good protein source, and they reproduce like mad. So
Yeah,
you
I don't
can
even
get
have to
100
raise
rabbits
them.
in
They
no
raise
time.
themselves around here.
Yeah.
We got wild rabbits to take over this place, but dude, we've even got wild cow.
Hey, I got one for you guys. When I was out earlier, Doe brought her baby up to see me.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she's
Female
about 100
deer.
yards away. Yeah, Doe brought a baby up, and it looked like a late baby, like right out of Spot's stage.
I was going to say that you're getting kind of late. We're already in almost August. I mean, it's going to get
Yeah.
cold soon. That baby's going to have to bulk up.
I'm thinking that, I mean, where I'm at, we've had decent moisture, not real great, but she could have had 2 of them. I'm in a pretty lush area, so.
Okay. But
yeah, if you can get a place where you got some wildlife around, that I mean, it's an excellent manageable resource.
And I'm sort of sad I'm going to be getting a donkey, because once I get that donkey, the bobcats will not be coming on my land anymore, unfortunately. And I really like with it. I love watching those bobcats.
Well, see, that's the reason I won't let anybody hunt on my land. And if I ever hunt, I'll go to the lower 10 acres because I don't want shit around the house spooked.
yeah, that's a good point.
There's lots of resources out there that we haven't touched in decades, really, dude. Populations of herd animals and shit like that has just exploded.
Yeah, JR, goat meat is great.
I'm not big on mutton, man.
Well, it's not mutton, that's sheep.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right.
Goat's not terrible. Only time I've ever had it was pretty fatty. I guess they did it bad, but I just had a bad piece, but it wasn't too bad. It tasted a lot like pork.
Well, it's pork. Like, what's the age of the animal?
Yeah,
that's like deer.
Yep.
And what does it eat?
Yeah, it's like deer. You don't want to shoot. To me, you don't want to shoot an old buck. You want to shoot a yearling spike buck or a yearling doe. I mean, that's going to be the best meat, and I think that's the same with everything. The older it gets, the tougher it gets. Look at me.
Yeah, and the other thing is what kind of animal you killing. You kill a mule deer compared to a whitetail. I mean, no offense, mule deer to me is like you can't even. It's like eating grass compared to a whitetail, which tastes a lot better than a mule deer. So it's
That's all we
animals
got
too.
around my house is whitetail.
Okay.
Lots of those. Lots.
Yeah,
In fact, we got too many.
Well, the best part about the area that I live in is like, if you're not into that kind of game, there is tons of pheasant and quail. And dude, if you ever tried a quail done on an open fire, and this works the same as like if you've ever tried wild duck, they're quite fatty too. Right?
Yep.
And
Same as
especially
goose.
mallards are like really fatty. Stuff them with fucking cherries, man. Stuff them with cherries, rotisserate them over an open fire, kind of like slow cook them a bit, give them, say, hour and a half, 2 hours of slow cooking. Best tasting fucking meat you'll ever have.
Well,
And it won't be fatty.
There's another way you can do it to keep it from being fatty. Drink half a beer, shove the can up their ass, and cook it until the beer's all boiled away. Now all that grease flows off of them, and you also get the inside is steamed with beer. It's yummy goodness from the inside out.
See, I've never been a fan of mixing beer with food. Like adding beer, wine, and sherries to stuff like that to food has never seemed to be a palate pleaser for me.
For me, I like, for example, everybody knows deer is pretty lean, and you run the risk of burning it if it's not in a good, butter or some kind of fat substitute. So, like pork fat, like bacon fat, like put that in a freaking, a can, and when you cook deer, just take a glob of that out, throw it on the dish, and then heat that up, and then throw the veal in there, not the veal, the deer in there, and then you're good to go. So a lot of it, like you could take fatty duck, mix it with some deer meat, and then let the fat render out, and then so it'll render into the deer, so it's not as gamey. So it's stuff like that, kind of like if you ever have a fishy fish, like you marinate it overnight in a gallon of milk, and it pulls all the fats out, and then you can make like sea bass taste like tilapia if you let it sit for 2 days and put it in the fridge. So it's the same premise.
Guys, I'm not gonna lie, I'm getting pretty fucking hungry, and I'm gonna go shoot me something pretty quick here if we keep going like this. I'm not gonna lie, it ain't fucking hard here. Sometimes they just walk right through the yard.
Yes, they do. I've got my eye on 3 yearling tom turkeys.
And that, talk about toms. I've seen so many wild turkeys lately. It's unfreaking believable. Like the population of turkey has exploded.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Wild turkey, I've heard, is pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyway, gentlemen, I got to take off. My little guy just got home, and he's screaming out for me right now.
Well, thanks for coming, Chris.
Yeah.
See you, Emperor.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you for having me. And we will talk to you all later.
Talk to you later.
Yeah, I got a tom and 7 hens running around here.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, they're coming up pretty close. They're getting used to me.
Yeah, they're like squirrels. Like they get used to you, and then like you feed a squirrel once, like you just created a best buddy at that point. But getting back to like the community end for homesteading, it's like life is not an individual sport; it's a team sport. Humans are a team species. We're not lone wolves. We need other people. So the question becomes, how do you determine who you let into your community, and who do you render out?
Yeah.
And that's the hard
Well,
part, is
it
that
it's
selection process.
it's invaluable networking. That's like case in point. Case a buddy of mine found a backhoe for $2,000 with a blown motor. I paid to get the motor rebuilt. Now I'm a part owner of a backhoe. I mean, you can't get equipment and stuff like that. If he's not using it, he's storing it down here, so I have access to a backhoe. If you can network with people, it makes your life a lot easier.
Yes, it does.
I mean, True Blood, wouldn't you have had a foundation done if you had a backhoe?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's homesteading's a bitch. Sorry, guys, it ain't easy.
But at this point, it's a necessity.
It's going to become a necessity. Yes.
Well, those of you who think that networking is hard, it's not. If you see your neighbor out working, like the guy that I'm buying my beef from, he has a son, and his son is in high school. But during the spring when he was in school, he couldn't help with the hay because he was in school. So my neighbor would be out there like 15, 16 hours driving the tractor around. And I said, hey, you need some help. And that's all it takes. You don't ask for money.
No, that's the worst.
You just say, hey, you need some help. And if they need help, they'll help you. And that after you help them, you're a good guy. You're part of the in crowd.
And it's, I hate to say it in these terms because it's not what I'm trying to say, but it gets the meaning across. It's a leverage. Like, you're leveraging your skill to someone else for a future leverage for that they can provide you in a sense. Like, I hate putting in those terms, but that's the simplest I could put it.
It's a balance.
It's, if done correctly, it's a balance. If
Right.
That's the hard thing. Like, you run the risk of getting
the
used.
balance, or else it'll fall apart. Bob, Bandit is a new brother that I ran into on Discord, and he wanted to do a stream. This is his first stream tonight, so we're popping his cherry, and not the way Riggs wants to, but in a good way.
Oh, Riggs.
So your time, if you think about it, your time actually is money, folks. And if, like, you got some backhoeing, if you got to dig some holes, it's a lot easier and faster to use a backhoe. Like for me, if I was to rent one, it would cost $150 just to get the backhoe to my property, because I live way the fuck out there. Because I'd have to rent the trailer, rent the truck to haul it, because my truck won't haul it.
Well,
and
that's one of the reasons that
how much is that $150 worth? How much time is that worth to me?
Exactly. Well,
that's not what it's worth to anybody else. What's it worth to me?
Well, that's one of the reasons I bought a new tractor, looking at used equipment, used parts, and the time to repair it. I bought new equipment, though it was more expensive, and I financed it for 3%. I can go out there, I hit those igniters and that plug, and it works.
Yeah.
I can go out and get something done 2 hours before I go to work, park it in the barn, jump in the car, go to work. I mean, your time is money. It's
right.
A resource.
And
resource.
Also, what do you want to do with your time? Like my primary goal of going out there and not renting a backhoe was to get some exercise. I hate going to the gym. Hate it.
Yeah.
Digging holes is good exercise.
Yeah.
I did break down and buy an auger, though.
I don't think there's nothing wrong with equipment. I really don't.
Yeah, because digging, I have a lot of fence post holes to dig, and I didn't want to do that by hand.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying about you could go out. I could rent a forestry mulcher for $2,500 for a weekend. So for me to do that, it was better to go with a backhoe where you can pop the small trees out. I mean, you got to weigh things for the resources what's going to take to get the job done. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's no joke. It's if you're serious about it.
Yep. And Maddie's absolutely right. You got to do your water first. First job, you got to have water.
Yep. Reliable water.
Now, I've got my water tastes a little funny, but it's safe to drink. We've got quite a bit of coal in like on my land. You've got 4 feet of really nice dirt. Then you've got about half a foot of sandy clay, and then you've got sandstone for about maybe 6 feet, and then underneath that first layer of sandstone, you got about a foot and a half of coal, and unfortunately, right about that level is where the water table is in my land. So my drinking water, if I was to drink it straight, would have a lot of coal taste to it, which is if you ever tried it, it's not that good. If I was to go drill down to the aquifer, that's about 2,000 feet and about a $40,000 hole.
Woo!
So fuck that.
Wow.
So I had to figure out a way to purify that water, and something that I could continue to maintain even if civilization fell. So I went and I studied my history books, and the Romans had a great way to do it. The Romans knew how to purify water. They knew in the army anyways, they knew the benefits of having clean drinking water for your troops. And you do it by pouring the dirty water inside of a series of unglazed ceramic pots, and you let the water filter out through the pots.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of but they're the red frickin' pot, like you'll find in the garden center at Walmart.
Terracotta.
Terracotta. Exactly, terracotta. If you have 2 or 3 of these terracotta pots that you let the water ooze through the terracotta and drip into the next pot, at the bottom of that stack, you've got clean drinking water.
Well, another way they were doing it is through sand too.
Yep.
Sand and charcoal make great filters.
Yep.
And charcoal's a really easy source. It's just, start a fire, whatever's left on the fire pit, that's charcoal. And you can just use that to... Now, granted, your water, you got to make sure you get that charcoal out, because charcoal's going to make you throw up. So that can make your dehydration problems worse, but charcoal's a pretty good resource.
Right, and there's if you want to make charcoal on a big scale, take a 55-gallon drum, and then get a galvanized steel trash can, put it upside down, or fill the drum with wood. Put the galvanized steel drum over the majority of the wood in that fire, and then light the outside of the wood on fire. It won't burn up the wood inside of the galvanized steel trash can, and you'll be left with quite a sizable amount of char. That's what they used to do is they would light these big trees on fire, and then they'd shovel dirt on top of them, and then dig them out after the fire cooled off. That's how they used to make charcoal. They'd strip the char off the big tree, light the frickin' tree on fire again, do it all over. But that's hard work.
Yeah.
But that's how they made charcoal since, I guess the Greek Empire or the Greek city-states time. They didn't really even know how to, the benefits of coal until the end of the classical era. All their steel back in the Greek and most of the Roman Empire time was made by using charcoal. Another skill everybody probably needs to pick up is a small bit of blacksmithing. You need to be able to make your own steel. Who knows how to do that? Out of you guys. Do you know how to do it, Indy?
Nope.
Well,
nope. And that's the reason I promote myself having a physical library, not electrical, iPad or any of that bullshit, a physical library of these skills. Because if you don't have them, if you can look at pictures and read, at least you can learn how to do it.
You can make crucible steel if you have charcoal and a source of wrought iron. There's wrought iron all over the place. An engine block could probably last a man his lifetime if he was to chop it up and use the iron in it to make steel.
Wouldn't you have to have the crucible?
Well, you got to make the crucible, but the crucible is not that hard to make.
It's not.
There's clay everywhere.
See, yeah, blacksmithing, I'm totally ignorant on. I can use
Maddie,
a cut
you want to come on? If you know how to forge, Maddie, come on.
Well, the great
Click
thing
that
is.
link.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just encouraging one of the brothers to join.
But a lot of these skills, it's one of those things right now. If you can't learn, we're in borrowed time in a sense. Like our time is very limited before we're going to lose everything. So the only way you're going to preserve knowledge at this point is either learn the skill, watch a video, and make notes, and buying books. So at this point, if if you're at the homesteading part and you want to start learning more skills to be more useful, start buying the books or making notes for YouTube videos. There's a lot of YouTube videos. The one I love to watch is he's a guy that lives on his own in the jungle, and he builds his own house made out of clay and shows you how to make the bricks, how to make the ceiling bricks, all the different stuff, how to use charcoal and iron to make your own weapons and all this other stuff. Like it goes all.
I would caution people: don't watch those videos if they come from Asia. They're all fake.
No, but there's a guy.
If you go to a site like Primitive Technology, that guy's awesome.
Yeah, that's the one I was. That's the one I was talking about. Like him, and there's another guy that does it. There's an ex-military guy that does it. He does living outside on under $100, and you might buy a tarp, flashlight, and just show you what you can do with minimal supplies. All that.
You're talking about Corporal's Corner?
It might, yeah. I think you nailed both of them, yeah. But
yeah, that guy's awesome.
But yeah, stuff like that is where you can start. Under $50, you can. Let's go make a shelter for under $50, and how am I going to survive? That kind of stuff. Or you can start thinking about okay, if I'm going out somewhere, maybe I should have the mindset of, okay, I should always bring with me up my backpack, and in my backpack should always have a first aid kit with hooks. So if I need to go fishing, I have the opportunity. Maybe a fire starter, maybe an emergency blanket, all that kind of stuff should get you in the mindset of anytime I'm going outside, I should have this kind of supplies with me all the time, so I can gain these kind of skills.
Don't forget your pistol.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Everybody forgets that because around where I live, there's black bear and bobcats. Around where like Chris Mitchell lives, there's freaking grizzly bears and mountain lions.
Yeah, I got, I guess my biggest thing would be mountain lions, and black bear, which isn't terrible, but
No, it's not terrible.
yeah,
And
compared to
most of the time,
grizzlies,
they won't bother you.
no. Unless they get familiar with humans and they have cubs with them, then they're a nightmare. Then black bears are scary. But that's the kind of stuff like hard. This kind of stuff is like skill based. So unless you're not using these skills on a quarterly basis, you lose how to do this kind of stuff. So it's always good to throw yourself in these scenarios in a kind of a controlled environment where you can practice this kind of skill behavior. Like everybody knows how to fish, but do you know how to like fish and know where to actually put your bait in, that kind of stuff. Like this.
Yeah. All right, I would like to welcome MGTOW Maddie, M&M, the MGTOW that melts in your mouth, not in your hand.
It's a good intro, but how your mob going?
Oh, it's going good, man. I hate to say it, but your audio sucks.
Is there a delay? Give me a minute. I'll try something else.
Yeah, that worked.
Okay.
Sorry, I keep muting. I've been fighting COVID, so I've been coughing on and off. So I didn't want to
All right,
have you guys hear me
better?
cough.
Testing 1 2 1 2 3.
Got it. Sounds great.
Excellent. Yeah, you
So how are
guys.
you tonight, Maddie?
Yeah, I'm okay, mate. Sorry if there's a bit of a delay. I've got to boom out to a satellite, then out onto the internet. Then it gets to you. Then it booms back to the satellite, back to me. So there's about a good solid 2-second delay. Yeah, you guys are off to a pretty interesting journey if you want to buy a block and go off grid and all that stuff. There's two things I would just tell you over and over again is solar, how you're going to set up your power. If you're going to be independent, then you really need a good solid 7 hours sun a day, absolute minimum, even in winter. If you're not getting 7 hours in winter, you're going to have to be running generator every second day at least.
You've got to overproduce by at least 30% and have enough batteries to last yourself a week.
Well, yes and no. See, this is a thing that you hear over and over from people that don't live with solar.
Now, he's country.
I run my entire house on 200 amp hour lithium batteries. So they're the size of a car battery. There's lithium as you can run it down really low, and you can also charge it up really fast. So going back to that solar gain, you can charge your batteries in 5-6 hours. It's really good. But if you're not getting your batteries to float at least every second day, and I would say at absolute minimum, like once every third day, you're going to destroy your batteries, you know, and that's lithium as well. And yeah, you don't need much battery as long as you're willing to, you know, tune down your amount of power that you use. So what I do is I charge all my 18-volt batteries during the day when I've got power and the batteries are on float, and then those batteries give me all my nighttime light, radio, all that stuff. And I can run my internet and my my laptop for good solid from about say 6 o'clock all the way through to like, I don't know, 2 in the morning. And then I cycle a freezer. So it's a 140 liter freezer. And then I cycle that during the daytime hours. So it runs during the daytime hours only. And that's it. And I've got 9 250 watt panels. I've got 3 orientated to the where is it? The west. So it catches the afternoon sun. And then the other 6 panels in an array catching the north sun. So that's it. And the whole thing you could put in a trailer and cart off to the top of a hill. You could backpack it out independently if you wanted to. All the parts weigh less than 10 kilos each. So it's pretty portable if you want to get it in somewhere and carry it into a remote area. You can also run a washing machine if it's on float. So you want your batteries to be fully charged and on float, and then you can use higher drain appliances. But the idea of like living like you do in the Big Smoke with like lights and TVs and toasters and kettles and microwave you can do. Microwave's easy. It's probably one of the easiest things to do. But yeah, and the other thing you need is a good inverter to change your power from 12 volt to, you guys would be 110, I think it is. In Australia, it's 240.
Well, yeah, it's 120, and then
yeah. Sorry. Anyway, I've been rambling. I've been rambling. I just wanted to tell you that at least.
My system's a little bit beefier because I use lead acid batteries because they're cheap, and I can monitor the chemistry inside the battery and extend its life that way. And it's really easy to find lead acid batteries. Every car has one, so if shit hits the fan, I don't have to worry about importing a battery from China or anything like that. Your sound is good now, Maddie, since you were asking.
Okay.
And
yeah,
I have quite a bit more. It sounds like I have quite a bit more battery capacity than you do. And I find that I don't have a washing machine or anything like that. I go into town and wash my clothes there. I will have a washing machine, but I find that if I have a electric tea kettle where I can heat up water or heat up soup or something like that, and then I've also got a toaster oven. Now the toaster oven uses a lot of juice, but it's definitely worth having enough capacity to do that. I've got a 5,000 watt inverter on my system, and I bought all my components from Harbor Freight, guys.
Yeah, Harbor Freight's a good store.
Yeah.
So for about $600 per kilowatt, you can get a system running.
I'm just curious, guys. What do you feel like? What's your opinion for like DIY solar panel versus like buying a kit? Do you guys have a preference, or do you prefer buying like a kit compared to building your own?
I don't know how to build solar panels. You know, if you've got a solar panel, they've got an output you've got of DC electricity.
Well, I was saying more like the storage. Like you can buy like batteries and then circuit them all together in a series to make it as a storage compared to like buying an inverter and buying the battery storage. You know?
Well, you have to buy the inverter to convert the DC to AC.
I know, but I'm just saying. I know people that like you can build your own battery storage. I didn't know if you guys feel like if it's worth it or not, or just buying batteries and calling it a day.
Well,
Like buying car batteries or something.
If you network your batteries together, you know, like I run mine in parallel so that I continually have 12 volts, but my amperage is really high, and you want those amp hours, and because the electricity is measured in kilowatt hours. That's how many how much power, because a watt is a measure of power, and you want that amperage higher so that if you have the electrical appliances running, like every time you start up an electrical engine, you have a spike in that power. You want to be able to handle that spike, because if you can't handle that spike, you're never gonna get full performance out of your electrical equipment. Electrical heaters, resistance heaters, which are the most common type, also have a spike when you first turn them on, and then the amp draw goes down, and they go to their UV rated voltage. I mean, UV rated, not UV, Underwriters Limited, UL rated power settings. You definitely need to, in your library, you need to have a book on electricity and how to get what you need out of the system. I think building it yourself is much better than buying a kit, because you can tailor make it to your own, specific needs.
I'll put my hand up here, and I'll say it depends on what you want to do. So if you want to have like just say a camping fridge, maybe one light, and you want to go out bush every now and again, then a pre-made kit is pretty good. If you want to set up a house or an additional reserve power supply. So here's the thing. A lot of people just don't get it. You can set up your own solar array and have your own battery system in suburbia and have a whole alternative way to power your house if you need to. It's really not that hard. The technology is there. It's going to cost you probably about $3,000 Australian. So that's about, I don't know, $50 a sec. Camera dropped. Yeah, so, oh shit, sorry guys. It's probably echoing right through. Here, I'll just try it here. Sorry guys. Yeah, and
wrestling a wombat.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about the delay.
Is the wombat okay?
Is wombat?
We're just messing with you. We're just messing with you.
No, I've got my dog snoring in the background, so hang on a minute. I'll prod her. Yeah, just look, the debate on solar versus lead acid, to me, as someone who's lived off grid for 5 years and in remote areas for a decade,
is just well and truly over. You can cycle lithium batteries down to like 10.5 volts, 11 volts. You don't want to do it all the time, but you can do it without really damaging the batteries that much. Try that with lead acid and you can destroy them just in a few cycles.
If you're
Then
not
you've
careful,
got the
that's
actual
for sure.
cycles. Then you got the actual cycles, right? So now you understand that you can cycle a lithium battery right down. You don't want to be cycling a lead acid battery below about 12.2 volts. So you've got between, depending on how you're running your system, 12.8 to 3.2 volts in an AGM. It's a absorbent glass mat battery, which are slightly better, but you still need to cycle your batteries so that you're running no more than 80% below your battery capacity with lead acid. So then you've got to service them. You've got to remember to top them up, which you don't, and then you end up frying them. And then the other thing is, like, if a cell drops out in one battery, it affects the whole bank. So now you've got the replacement of a new battery into an old bank, and that's more problems. Then you've got to have multiple batteries to make a bank generally, which increases the likelihood of them failing. And you can actually buy now lithium batteries like 200 amp hour. You can buy the 3 whatever it is volt. They're just like you'd run a battery bank with the large industrial sort of storage lead acid stuff, but they do it in lithium. And I just can't tell you enough about how it will change your life having lithium batteries. You'll run a bank, say you've got 20 lead acid batteries. You'll put a bank of 4 3-volt batteries on there, and you'll have more power and you'll have less problems, and you'll just be like, oh my God, why didn't I do this earlier? Like, they're light. You can carry them, which is another bonus. You can put them in a car, you can invert them, you can put them in strange places if you need to without spilling them. You don't have acid. You don't have to go to the store to buy acid to put in the batteries or distilled water. So that's my rant. But
Well, those are all great points.
You'll just be blown away. When you try a lithium battery bank, you'll just be blown away. And the good thing is they're foolproof. You know, like, you got to remember, if you're setting up a home base somewhere, let's say, you know, God forbid, you fall off the perch and you're no longer around to instruct people on how to care and manage for a battery bank. Well, it's gonna fry in less than 6 months. So, you know, and then the other thing about having to buy, like, don't get sucked into buying secondhand batteries. No matter what they say, do not do it. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, secondhand batteries are worthless.
You know, and you're looking at 500 to 600 cycles for a lead acid battery before they start failing, and something like 2,000 cycles for a lithium battery before they start failing. Like, which one do you want to have? So they are a bit more to buy initially, but the payoff is just insane. And especially for a car, like a caravan or a car, or, you know, to save over 60% on your weight consideration between the two batteries and get 3 times more out of them is, to me, it's just a no-brainer. Anyway, your turn.
No, I just said pardon me when I sneezed.
I was just curious, guys. What do you feel about Starlink for like remote internet access?
I'm getting it.
I use a different type of system. It's very, very similar. I'd say from the looks of it, Starlink is more portable than the system that I've got. It's a fixed system.
And the lag is much less.
It could be. I don't know. I've never used it. So yeah, I just don't know. But I think the cost. I think the cost is probably 3 times more. Like, what have you heard? What do you guys heard? Starlink
I've heard
a month.
500 for the setup, and then $90 a month.
Which, I mean, it opens up a lot of avenues though, because now you can be on a ship, you can be on a camper van, you could be on a like this opens a lot of different avenues to move into once Starlink gets more used and then the cost goes down. Because once they view it as a decent product and then they're making a killing, you're gonna have like Verizon and all the other ones making their own version of that network, and then once competition hits, prices are gonna fall because you'll be able to.
Yeah, I'm paying about a third of that. So that'd be like 90 US, which would be about 140 Australian, and I'm paying like less than $50 a month. So the thing to remember is, in a lot of areas, you don't need satellite. I mean, granted, it's nice and all, but you don't need it because you can run 5G on your phone and just do a peer-to-peer, like a Wi-Fi hotspot, and just run all your internet through your phone. And you'd be surprised you can get, because they're trying to get everyone addicted to looking at their phones non-stop, they're throwing like data packs like 50 gig a month, 100 gig a month for like $50, or you can buy an unlimited plan for, I don't know, $60 a month. If I had phone service where I am, that's what I would do, because it's an additional cost. I've got to run the internet, like satellite internet, and then my phone separate. So these little costs, you really want to think about it. Like I had to sign up for an Adobe program just so that I could look at certain things and send them to council and all this crap. It's $38 a month. That's more than $400 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Just open programs, like over 10 years, it's $4,000. Well, if you've got 5 of those sort of fixed costs and you're off grid, it adds up. And with the cost of fuel, like my fuel costs have gone up by a third. And that's something else to think about. The whole idea of running tractors and stuff, well, you may not, it may be so prohibitive to run a tractor, you may not be able to get the fuel or the right quality, especially parts for some of the newer tractors, and you could have big problems. $50,000 just sitting there doing nothing because you can't get filters or fuel for it.
That's why
I'd much rather have a chainsaw and sorry, go on.
I was just saying that's why running like a community base, because I'm a believer of homesteading, but I'm also a believer in the community mindset too. So like having like a decentralized like power station, a sewage treatment plant, and then maybe like internets where you can split that cost. Like if you had unlimited internet with like Starlink, and then you're in a community of like 150 people, and you're sharing that same network that you create, that cost can be passed on to multiple people, and that could be a game changer. So instead of paying like $150 a month, you're paying like $1 a month for the same unlimited internet because you're just going to do it through a server.
Yeah, I love the idea of communal stuff, but it very rarely works out. Someone ends up holding the bag, as in having to pay the costs for basically slackers. I've seen a lot of community stuff, and it usually breaks down to cliques and factions, and the ones on the good side of the hill and the ones on the bad side of the hill, and people don't understand why they have to pick up their rubbish, and I've very rarely seen it work well in the long term. And the problem with going in on land or property, whatever, with people is if you go in with just say 3 people, we'll keep it like simple. 2 people will always side, right? So the other problem with it is if one person wants to bail out, it puts a lot of pressure on the other 2 people to buy that share. Now, if someone else buys the share and it's a legally binding contract with 3 of you in a multiple occupancy property, you've got no control over who comes in. It could be single mother with an old school bus with like 24 children to 30 dads, just running rampant, total crack fiend. You got no control.
Well, that's
so if you're the 100% share, like you own the whole show, then you don't have a problem as much.
I kind of think about it more of running it as
thing.
Today,
in today's legal minefield, here's the problem: is let's say I go, hey, Bandit, you're my best mate. Come on over, park your caravan, somewhere, anywhere you want. It's a big block. And you go, I'll choose this spot. No worries. You happy with this spot? Yep. You really happy with it? Yep. No problem. There's some high wind, a tree falls and smashes your caravan. And then you're like, well, you should cover this under your insurance. And I'm like, well, why should I cover it under my insurance? And you say, well, I don't got no insurance. And I say, well, I don't got no insurance either. And you go, well, I need somewhere to live, so I'm going to take you to court. So now I'm paying for your new caravan that you decided to park where you wanted to and you were happy with it, but now it's my problem. And
well, that's where I get into like contracts where like it's not you that owns the property, like the communal owns the property, kind of like how like the ghettos in the early 1900s, where you had like the Italian ghetto, you had like the Irish, you had the all the different nationalities. They would have their own section of town, and you basically the community had like a fund, and then they sponsored somebody to come over here, and if you didn't work out, they just kicked you out of the community, and that's how that worked. It's all basically quote unquote mob run. It wasn't run by the mob, but it had the same kind of philosophy. You paid into this, you agreed to follow these rules, and if you didn't agree to the rules, the money went back into the community, and then you were kicked out. It was that simple. That's how things are done.
I like it.
That's how things are done, like the 1800s.
No. If you ever get a chance, I saw a documentary. It was about 2 a.m. It was on like our alternative TV type station, and it was called. It was on about a place called Black Bear Lodge, and I remember the name of it and the story of it, and it was just insane. So it was up in Canada somewhere, and this place is still around to this day. So it'd probably be worth checking out. And this documentary was all about these guys that pooled their money and then bought. I can't remember whether it was 600 acres or 1,200 acres, but it was a fair chunk of land up in Canada somewhere, and it was basically sort of hilly, unfarmable land, which is why the people sold it, because there was no point trying to farm it. So it was hard country. Anyway, they built a big lodge, and they had just these drawers with like communal clothes. So they washed the clothes and put them away, but you just woke up and just fished through the drawers, and whatever you felt like wearing, you just put on, and you put it back clean. And they put in all these tomato plants, and then the local sheriff came and raided them and ripped up all their tomato plants, thinking that they were weed. And
How?
they had some people move into the lodge, because they were like a commune, and they came, and they were from California or somewhere, and they were basically like real hardcore drug heads, and they didn't want them there. And the thing that I remember was they said, just like you said, they said, we just started chanting at them, go, 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 and just pointing their finger to the gate, and the entire community just shouted at them, go, for like 2 hours, 3 hours, and they finally just all grabbed their stuff and left. So
Well, that's where
I like what you're saying,
but I'm just saying I like to look at history and use what works through history. So like that's how a lot of the communities were based from like the 1880s to like the 1930s. So all the last big immigration push that we had for Western Europe that came to America. Now, a lot of it was done because you had organizations and you had shared values and everything else. So that's the key thing. You got to figure out what your culture is going to have for values, principles, ethics, morals. Like you got to think about everything if you're going to do a community. And if you don't meet these rules, you're kicked out and you lose everything. And you set up a trust, and the trust, it's kind of like a church in a sense. Like you're following these rules. We agree to do X if you agree to do Y, and if you don't agree that, your property gets thrown back into the trust, and that's the end of it. Like that's
I like where you're going with it. But I like where you're going with it, but I'm getting too old to deal with those dramas. Like I don't need to be Mr. in between like one mob on one side and one mob on the other. There's a reason why I live out here by myself, is because I don't like drama. And
amen to that, brother.
Invite all this drama into your life. It's like, God damn, like I mean, I think that really, if you want to talk about going off grid for, I call it the end of the world, like whatever you want to call it.
Just a fan.
Something happens, whatever. You're in all sorts of problems because every person that you know knows, say, 10 people in their family, and they're.
It looks like we lost Eminem.
See?
But he's right. Every person you know knows 10 people.
Yeah.
And you have to be really selective about who you invite into your space.
Guys, I talk to you guys pretty much, a good friend and one of my kids. I'm sorry, you have to have OPSEC,
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Well, you got to have OPSEC, and you just gatekeep and vet people because, That's like people hunting on my property. Back in the day, it wasn't a problem. You know, somebody come
Yeah,
up
when
and
you
say,
first
"Hey,
get there.
right, right." Well, back in the day, you could let people hunt on your property. Hey, you shoot deer, I get a quarter of it. You know, but nowadays you can't really do that because of the liability. I mean, the liability of letting somebody else hunt on your property. You know, what I mean, the insurance. People's got to think about things like this. The risk analysis in today's society. You know.
Plus, no one's really mature with a gun today, anyways. Like, half the hunters out there are like pointing their gun at people and like joking around and drinking and doing stupid shit. Like, there's no, you're not taking this shit seriously, and then you wonder why people are getting shot, like misfires and all this other bullshit. Like, I can't stand that. Like you're pointing a gun at, like, one thing, you should never be hunting and getting like, I mean, it's okay to drink, but don't get fucking plastered and go and start hunting. Like, are you retarded? You know what I mean? Like,
I I
I've never
don't
understood
know.
that.
Yeah, well, I don't know anybody that I know that drinks and hunts. Now they'll drink after they go hunting, but they're not messing around with a goddamn firearm while they're drinking. Period.
No.
It's not even one beer. So
Well, not everybody's like that. I'm telling you.
right, but
There's
I
enough
mean, if you see somebody like that, you gotta get
You don't hunt
minimum
with them ever
safety.
again.
Well, minimum safe distance.
Well, most of the time, you end up tackling that guy for doing something stupid and beating the living shit out of that guy and showing him that ain't gonna happen again. Like, there, this isn't like three strikes you're out kind of crap when you're dealing with guns. It's one strike and you're getting your ass beat. You know what I mean?
That's
Like,
the reason I just
you
stay away
can't
from
screw
them.
around with that. You can't at all.
Well, I'm a fairly good judge of character, and I don't go hunting with people like that to start with. But I'd like to welcome Truth Anchor to the stream. Welcome,
Thank you.
brother.
It's a pleasure to be here. I got to agree with Andy. That's my experience as well. All the hunters that have done it for many years, they've all done it sober. Now, fishing is a very different story.
Yeah, I gotta agree with that. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Unless you're
and if
fishing with dynamite.
The
well,
worst,
that could be questionable too.
the worst I've ever seen is like fly fishermen that are inside the creek, that in a high current creek up to like their ankles, and they're freaking wasted, and they're like almost like face planting into like the water. It's ridiculous. It's hilarious. It's a good laugh, but yeah, I mean, like, people are just, there's no one's taking anything seriously anymore. Like, you know, 2 generations ago, you were allowed to bring a shotgun in your freaking truck and go to school. And that was completely okay. Everybody was doing that because everybody after that would take their shotgun or their rifle. Even if they're in middle school, they would go to the junkyard and start shooting rats or squirrels or whatever. Nowadays, you can't be doing that. God forbid a kid brings a shotgun and puts it in his car. That kid is done. Like, and
Yeah, we
everybody.
all had gun racks in our trucks when I was growing up.
Well, I didn't have that. I didn't have that. That was like my dad's generation. Like,
Well, I'm
I
your
think it
dad's
depends on what
generation.
state.
Let's face it, Bandit, you're young enough to be my son.
all right, well, that's fair enough. But so you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Like,
Yeah.
everybody were raised by guns, so they had a respect for guns, or they had a respect for going to, killing an animal and treating it with respect that it deserves, and not just like playing with it or anything like that. Like, you killed a fish, you didn't waste the fish. You would eat the fish. You know what I mean? Or you release the fish. Do you know what I mean? Like, when you hunt something, you don't just there to kill the animal. You're there to, eat the animal or give it its respect that it deserves. You're not there to wound it. You're there to kill it. You're not trying to hurt the animal. You're trying to put it out of its misery and treat it with respect. People were shooting at like 7, 8 years old. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
you bring a teenager and show them a freaking gun, the teenager's gonna have a freaking like a freaking meltdown. You give an average teenager a rifle and teach him how to shoot, he's probably shaking. I don't care who he is, especially a woman. If you brought a woman to a gun range, they're gonna freaking lose their mind. And it's ridiculous. And that's how far we've come. And think about this: when your True Blood, when your generation dies, that's all completely lost. You're not going to get that back. You're not going to get that respect for that kind of stuff anymore. And then you wonder why we have like school shootings and all this other shit, because no one respects anything anymore. It's bullshit.
Well, it starts earlier than even when you get a gun. Like, we weren't allowed to get out. We had a fence around where the house was, and we weren't allowed to go outside the picket fence until we could throw a rock and break a Coke bottle.
Gotcha.
Because we had snakes. And if you could throw a rock and break a Coke bottle, you can take care of any snake out there.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, no. No,
Okay.
what you want.
Maybe not a freaking anaconda,
Yeah,
but the snakes where I grew up, you can kill with a freaking rock. And I did. I killed my first rattlesnake at 6 years old.
You want to know how we kill them out here?
How?
We get a bit of wire. You want real head gauge. You can double twist wire to make it heavier, but you want to make it about 6-8 foot long with a bit of a D for a handle at one end, and you crack it down like a whip. And the advantage is that when you whack it down, it's going to lay over about 2 foot of ground, and you just cut them in half. And we got a different sort of level of snakes to you guys, because we've got, out of the world's top 10 deadliest snakes, we've got 7. And there's
everything wants to kill you in Australia.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
It's gonna be Australia.
There's 5
Australia, right?
of the top 10 that live here with me. I've got some jars with like death adders.
Oh God.
3 in the world, and you don't even see them. They lay in a leaf litter, and you just don't even see them. They're only about a foot long, and they've got the world's fastest bite. So if you step on them, they'll bite you. You can step right around them; they won't touch you. But yeah, and a friend of mine he had 7 working dogs that he took out in one day to round up cattle, and he lost 5 of them in one day.
That's bad.
From snakes. So
Well,
yeah,
our snakes around here are polite.
Like the using the whip, you just cut. See, when you've got like a pointed object, you've only got one. Yeah, you've only got one point where you can impale something. Where if you use that wire whip, it'll just cut them in half. And
hey, True Blood likes
get the head
swimming
to try
snakes.
and get some part of it, because it'll be so angry.
He's head and shoulders above him.
I mean,
Maddie, what Indy's talking about is I don't have a bathtub or a shower, so but I live right next to a lake, and this summer the water moccasins decided to get real friendly with me when I was taking my baths out in the lake.
Yeah, water moccasins are not fun.
Well, he switched shampoos, you know. He went for that kind of floral, fuffy stuff, and that's attracted him.
Bullshit.
Yeah, I got a good story.
He's defying shampoo.
I was gonna say I got a good story with an Eastern Diamondback.
So it sounds like you're so these are your poisonous snakes, or sorry, venomous snakes over there. They got diamondback and a rattlesnake. What else?
Oh, we got copperhead.
Cottonmouth. You guys got
Cottonmouths. Yeah, that's the kind of snakes that I was swimming with.
Yeah, copperheads, water moccasins.
Nice.
You got eastern and western diamondbacks, which are rattlesnakes.
Timber rattle.
Yeah, yep, timber rattle. Yeah, because I was on the Appalachian Trail hiking, and I literally sat next to an eastern diamondback, and the fact that it was fall and not spring probably saved my life because the snake was too cold to actually do anything.
Well,
It's
it's
ridiculous.
bad,
Damn.
but the problem is if you go hiking, you can't walk with all that venom in your body. So yeah, if you go hiking by yourself, you're gonna die before you
Yep.
get out.
Exactly. I was 20 minutes from the nearest road, so yeah, I would have been done.
Well, the best thing you could do is probably tourniquet off.
Yeah, but I was a kid back then, so it's like it's crazy how sometimes you're able to dodge. And I even know I sat next to it. It didn't rattle, didn't do anything. But when I, stepped away and looked back, and there it was, sitting on your leaves. It's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
I haven't been so lucky. I've got 57 bites by 7 different species.
Holy
and
crap!
two of them were
You got
venomous.
anti-venom going on.
But yeah, most of it was my fault. So I was picking them up to display them and stuff like that, and bang.
Was you
ended up
fucking
getting
with 'em?
bit.
Yeah, he
Was
was
you fucking
fucking
with
fucking
him?
with
He
him.
was fucking with him.
play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
See, guys, it don't even
That's
have to be
it.
a snake. It don't even have to be a snake. It could be a farm animal. Are you fucking with it?
So the other thing I was going to say to you about choosing a property is you want to think about fire.
Yeah.
You want to be
Yep.
able to put a sterile area in at least 100-foot wide, and this isn't going to stop a full-blown fire. We had really bad fires in my area a couple of years back, and a few people got killed just near here, and yeah, not good at all. And yeah, you'd be surprised, even just a small grass fire. Light a few cardboard boxes in your shed and just see the carnage that can cause just from a grinder or something simple. And yeah, you got to think. To me, the number one thing for people to be able to take over a remote area, really, really simple, is just the right day, the right wind, and a box of matches, and they're just going to burn you out, and they'll just take what's left. So wherever you're going to go, you want to try and do your perimeter burns around your property and that kind of things, so that you've got a sterile area where you just can't get a fire going enough to really threaten you. And I would suggest that everyone does it every single year. Like I've just been doing it for the past probably 3 or 4 weeks. And it's a little bit green yet, but it's still burning. And you'd be surprised. All these people that, oh yeah, I've got this special place, whatever. 10 bottles with diesel and petrol in them, and a couple of simple wicks, and you're not living there anymore. And
Well,
enough to fill that is in the bottom of every single car on the side of the road. So yeah, I mean, you don't even need petrol. You could use oil and it would still go, So to me, fire is your absolute number one threat. And even just a forest fire gets going. I've been in Cali again. And yeah, even just a 6-foot grass fire, you'll be so much damage it can do.
So anyway, that's me.
Well, that's why a lot of like the areas, like I know for a fact, like just because I visit my sister in New York a lot, every single homestead, literally right in front of the house. What is it? About an acre to 5 acre artificial pond is in front of that person's house. And that is their firefighting, that is their fish, that serves so many purposes having a pond next to your house. Because it offers that protection and the ability to
Yeah.
fight a fire if it ever came to that. So, and they're not that they're pretty
Well,
inexpensive to make. It's like 10 to
as
15
someone,
grand to make between
yeah.
a 1 and
Here's
5 acre
the
pond.
problem is it just depends on where you are, particularly the incline and also the prevailing winds. Also the side of the hill that you're on. So let's just say you pick the side of the hill that is not, well, I don't know which way to be for you guys. For us, it's north facing, but the side of the hill that gets all the sun. Basically, there'll be a shadow side which is cool and have like a lot of sort of semi rainforest type plants. It's in the shade basically of the valley, and then you'll have the side that gets bleached by the sun. That side's great to set your solar panels up on, but because it gets hit by the sun for an extra 3 hours a day, it's also tinder dry, so it's also going to burn. So just which side of the hill you're on can make a difference, and the incline is especially important. I've seen fire jump 25 kilometers, which is what 15 miles. So embers going up the size of cigarette packets, lit up God knows how high, 1,000 meters, whatever, or like a mile, and then falling down 15 miles ahead of the fire front. So it really depends on just how vicious the fires get where you are, and I would plan on the absolute worst. And the worst is the glass on your windows reflects heat, and the furnishings on the inside of your house catch fire just from the heat coming in. Not any actual flame getting inside the house, just the actual heat will set the furnishings on fire. So, and these are the sort of conditions that you see in like 40 degree centigrades, about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 110 Fahrenheit with a stiff wind. Forget about it. Just forget about it. You're not going to defend it. And that's from a grass fire. Call your vehicles and everything on that, and be prepared to lose structures. So, going back to our solar panels, it'd be a really good idea if they were in a really cleared area where nothing could fall on them, and they were in a sterile area. So they were like 6 foot off the ground. So you could actually put a fire through it once a year. Forget weed spray, just put a fire through it and test it. See if it's actually out of the fire. Because once you lose these things, once you lose your solar panels, once you lose your batteries, things like that, they may be very, very hard to replace, and you want to try and take care of them. And I think realistically, in the world that we're in, with the climate, the way it's changing, is fire, and second one's flood. So,
Well, you can't prevent both. You have to kind of pick your poison. Like a good area that's great for anti-fire is normally going to be near water, and water is going to get you flooding. So it's a really hard balancing act between which poison. Like if you're in California, yeah, you should. Fires are a priority, but if you're in like say Seattle where it's a freaking rainforest, I would be more concerned about flooding than I would be concerned with fire. So I guess it all depends on where you're staying and where, like True Blood. You live in Kansas. You probably have a plan for a tornado because
Well,
you're on
we
the
have to worry about fires here too,
yeah. But I'm just
and
saying, like,
that's the whole reason why I've got metal siding.
I don't really have to worry about tornadoes as much as you do. Like,
Yeah,
the
but
risk
tornadoes are, they're pretty localized.
yeah.
Your chances of getting hit by a tornado are not that high, but you'd be a fool not to have a storm cellar.
Yeah, that's my point. Like, you build in other things like that I would never have to contemplate. So, like, where your geographical area is important for what you want to plan for on your homestead.
Well, that I can dovetail into that regarding a basement. If you can give up some other things for a basement, I, to me, a, a basement, guys, this whole summer, it's been hot here, 110, 104, whatever in hell. The thermostat that records downstairs never got above 73.
Yep.
Never got above 73. The coolest it got was like 64 all summer long. And that's with the air conditioner keeping the upstairs at 75 degrees.
Well, I mean, that's the same premise as like what the people in the Revolutionary War used to keep their food cold. They were called ice rooms, and they would basically dig a room below the frost belt for the soil, and then they would throw some ice cubes. They would throw a giant ice cube in the winter, and that would make them through most of the summer, and that would keep that room roughly 50 degrees. I totally agree with you. A basement is basically a must because that's a cheap way of keeping your stuff cool.
Well,
Well,
if you can give up some of the other stuff, I mean, some of these people going out wanting to buy homesteads and property, they're like, well, I want, a dishwasher. I don't know, something silly, guys. And it's like, I would rather have this than a basement, a water softener. I want a water softener instead of a basement. You know what I mean? And it's like that basement's a lot more use than that water softener.
well, I knew some old timers. They would store their groceries that they wanted to put in a refrigerator if they couldn't afford one, like in a creek.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
A spring's coming out of the ground at 56 degrees.
Yep. My
You guys
grandfather had
are you guys are
a
so
spring
lucky.
house, and he would keep his milk in there before he delivered it every day. He'd store the milk in the spring house,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd keep for 3 or 4 days without going bad.
Yeah, and now that's a natural way of keeping your stuff cool. Which keeping stuff preserved is the name of the game. If you can't even if you can it still has a shelf life. So if you can keep stuff cool without actually having to use electricity to keep it cool, that's a giant plus.
Well, also, I think sun drying is very important.
Yeah, if you can dry your food, if you can
Jerk it.
smoke it, it's all good.
It's actually one thing that's missing from a lot of people's preps is salt. And
Yep.
if your power goes off, it's a great time to practice a really good prep, and that is the power's gone off and you need to preserve as much food as possible. So you make up a brine, and an easy way to test a brine is you get a boiled egg and you put in the salt, and when the boiled egg floats on the surface of the water, then the brine's thick enough with salt. And then just put all your meat in. I would obviously divide the brine so that you're doing your chicken and stuff in one, and your pork in another one, all that kind of stuff. And just soak it in whatever containers you've got for 12 hours,
maybe 24 hours if you've got the temperature, like it's cool enough to leave it in the brine, and then put it either in the sun or in a smoker, and see whether you can actually preserve most of your freezer. And all the fatty stuff you want to eat first, so the fat will always go rancid when you try and smoke it or store it long term. So use all your fat first and all the lean meat. And salt, and you need salt for it. You need like how many pounds was that? So you need like 10-20 pounds of salt, which is like a 4-gallon a 2-gallon bucket full of salt to do a whole freezer. And most people don't have it in their preps. They don't have it in their house. So when the freezer goes off, they're gonna lose all that meat. And then if the garbage man isn't coming, that's a lot of meat to dispose of. I don't know if you've smelt like what an entire freezer going rancid
it's bad
outside of every person's house is like, but it's pretty bad. So something to think about.
Yeah, another thing about if you can swing it, vacuum seal is a great one too, because if you can vacuum seal it, at least at that point you could boil it and pre-cook it. If it goes bad, you can cook it in the plastic, and at least the food won't go rancid on you, as long as it's vacuum sealed, because you got to keep that air out. So
well, as long as it's sterile when you put it in, that's true.
Yeah, correct. But like if you can vacuum seal it, that's another way of letting your meat source last a little longer.
Right. Don't forget pickling as well.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Can I ask you? Sorry, can I ask you a question, Bandit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you ever actually done this?
I've been pickling for a long time, and I've been
No. The vacuum sealing.
Yes, I have. I have done vacuum sealing, and it's
vacuum
to me
sealed before you put it in the freezer or after?
Oh, it's 100% before. So like if you
the problem is with taking it out, once it started to defrost, it's all over. Like if you're not going to put it back into a freezer that's actually running, you're wasting your time. It's just going to go rancid even faster because all the juice is like sealed in there. So it doesn't even get a chance to dry out. So the bacteria just breeds. So if you do it beforehand, then I agree. But there's no point. The only thing you can do with that meat is cook it and pickle it, like you say, or brine it and dry it, smoke it, whatever. Like once it's defrosted, it's over. Like you've got to use it or do something with it. That's
I
it.
always vacuum seal it when I can. Like even if I go to like Costco or something, if they have like meat or something, I'll just throw in there, vacuum seal it real quick. It keeps one thing it does is makes the food taste so much better because it keeps the freshness in, and second, it allows me to freeze it.
That's where I would 100% agree with you. When I used to do long distance, like remote trips, so I was like in the bush for 3-4 weeks at a time, I would go to the butcher and give them a list and just say, look, I know it's a little bit more work, but can you vacuum seal everything like portion size, like like a whole steak. So I ordered like a kilo of steak or two kilo of steak. Was that 5 pounds of steak?
Okay.
But I wanted each steak done individually, and then I just paid the extra. And the difference between having that on the road was extreme, and that I would totally agree with you 100%. If you do it beforehand, that meat can actually even start to go to defrost, but because there's no oxygen in there, it just doesn't degrade. so you can kind of refreeze it if you're running your car fridge off your car. Anyway, your turn.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, I guess I'm kind of spoiled because of where I live. Like, I have access to Amish, and a lot of them they'll actually vacuum seal it for you. So like you'll come back and just everything's already portioned out and vacuum seal. You just have to throw it in your fridge and you're done.
Oh, another thing you want to have is a ready supply of extra canning jars.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If you have, you should always keep, I would say, double your supply non-canned. So like if you have 12 canned, you should have 24 in storage. Because basically you can the jars are completely reusable unless they break. The lids you probably can get about maybe 3 or 4 uses at them tops before they start rusting. And then the tops, they only last one time. So once that vacuum seal breaks, they're done. So you can't reuse the tops. So the lids are the ones you really gotta get a lot of, and the O-rings probably last about 3 or 4 times.
Well, there's a workaround for the tops. You take a piece of like old T-shirt, and you soak it in wax.
Okay.
And you put the wax on hot, and then screw the lid down on top of it, and that will keep a good seal, even if the rubber seal on your lid is gone.
Now, do you have to do that every single time you take the can off? Like, say you pop it, say you're making pickles, and you want a pickle. Do I have to reseal it every single time?
No, not with pickles. But I don't. If I open up a can of pickles, it's not going to last long.
Yep.
Hey,
Yep.
Zombro's alive. I haven't seen him for a while.
Easy.
Oh, he's in Vegas.
Oh, he's green from Vegas strip club. Oh, wait a minute. That's not what he said.
Yeah.
I'm in a strip club, hookers and blow. No, that's not what he said. That's the wrong guy.
So if you're wanting to get started with canning, it's very important to know that seal everybody's talking about is very important. If you are pushing your can lid down and it actually pops up and down,
don't
if it's
eat
actually popped up, you'll get botulism.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, I purposely make sure that, like if you look at the jar, like where it starts the bottleneck, I will purposely spend the extra time and take scissors and cut my pickles to the point where they don't go past that part where it starts getting skinny at the top again. Once that jar gets starting to get skinny, that's my top limit. If it's the pickle's too big, you got to cut them down the size. You can't screw around with botulism. That's very serious. Like, I'm 100% agreeing with you on that. You do not mess around with that at all. And just
a fun fact: more people died in the Middle Ages from food poisoning than died from the Black Plague.
Yep.
Because your food quality was just so bad.
Well, they didn't get a lot of vitamin C.
Yeah, definitely something to think about.
Yep. Yeah, another thing with canning is like don't waste the brine. Like it is cheaper to buy extra pickles and jam that jar full of frickin' pickles and use less brine than to have like a loose jar with like, a couple different slices of pickles in there, and then you're wasting all that brine. So like when I used to make my own pickles, I would purposely go to the produce place and grab like 10 pounds of cucumbers, and then chop them up into eighths and make sure that they're the right size, and then jam that jar completely filled. Like you shouldn't be able to move anything in there, and just pray
and you can pickle more than just pickles.
Oh, of course.
There's sauerkraut, which I love it. You can pickle your peppers. You can pickle garlic. You can pickle carrots.
I like the medley.
Basically, any vegetable you can pickle.
You ever try the medley?
And eggs.
Or you do
Pickled eggs. Pickled eggs.
Yeah,
Yep.
pickled eggs.
You do
And-
in a jar. You do carrots, cabbage, onions, and beets, and throw them all together in a jar.
Oh, I forgot pickled beets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you throw them all into a jar, and then you pickle that all together, and it's basically like, the great thing is you can take that, throw that on a salad, and just pour the juices on top, and you get your own like vinaigrette. It's like, it's all, you can basically take that to work and make your own salad.
And don't forget you can put
Cauliflower too.
stuff in there, like if you put red cayenne peppers or habaneros in your pickling jar, that's gonna completely change the flavor of your pickles.
Oh,
I love that stuff. Oh man.
My recipe is it's 2 slices of banana hot peppers, 2 cloves of garlic, a crap ton of dill, and you throw the pickles in, put your brine in, and it's like a banana hot. It's a warm heat, so when you eat it, you get that nice little heat at the end. It's great. It's not super hot. It's not like throwing like a jalapeno or a habanero, but it's a warm heat. It's good.
Hey guys, before I forget, just to let you know, 8 months ago, I ordered a 24-quart All-American steam canner, pressure canner,
Oh, there you
cooker,
go.
what? But this was 8 months ago, but it took 3 months to get it. So 8 and 3, was that 12 months?
5.
Some of this stuff is so far behind. If you're going to get stuff to be prepared, you better be getting it, because, guys, the stuff that's not even being reported on, canners, mason jars, lids, because you got to think lids are life limited. The jars aren't, but the lids are.
Yep, lids are the linchpin of canning, because it's like, and O-rings, because you only get like once the O-ring rusts, you're done. So you only get like 3 or 4 runs out of the O-rings before you got to retire them too.
The
for me,
supply
I think
chain is breaking down.
This is the thing, guys, is you have to really, really look at all this stuff as what do I do when I don't have any more O-rings? What do I do when I don't get any more lids? What do I do? Blah, blah, blah. And for me, personally, I don't see much point in canning and things like that.
Well, what you do is you use that
when
wax.
I can go to the shops and I can buy
do wax.
cans of.
Yeah, you can do beeswax.
Yeah, I agree, but I concentrate on growing fresh. I concentrate on growing fresh. Like, I want to have fresh greens, fresh everything. And for some of you guys, you go through like winters.
Yeah.
Like 95% of Australia doesn't go through a if you're getting 3 months of snow and you got no greens, I totally agree with it. I understand it. And
well, see, you can do cold boxes and other things to get greens.
Like what's a 20? It's yeah. There's ways to store things. I think the like doing a whole goose is so you pluck your goose, you quarter it and chop it up, blah blah blah. Take out most of the bone, and then render the fat. So boil it, and then let the fat cool down. So then put the cooked goose into boiling hot, jars, and then put the goose fat on the top, and then let it cool down and put it in your cellar, and you've got, fresh goose lard plus tasty goose underneath. When you didn't have fridges, and we can't do that here because of the temperature, just go rancid. I just try and grow fresh all year round.
Well, you have to look at what's the purpose of canning. Canning is also, it's not just to preserve, it's also a trade commodity. So, like, you're running low on lids. Like, I'll trade you, 3 cans of this and you're going to give me lids. So, like, it's, excuse me, it's a great bargaining chip that a lot of people can use if you don't have the money or you need something. Canning is a great thing of, a good exchange between two people. Like they always say, like you can trade silver and gold. I don't think that's going to be as important as food.
I think something that's going to be even more important than food is going to be alcohol, especially tobacco, and shine. And you can make shine out of, well, I make shine out of generally sugar or dextrose, but you can make it out of fruit, but it's only got about 10% fruit, 10% sugar per pound. So it's very, very little sugar. You got to be putting a lot of fruit through. Same sort of thing for corn and wheat. Like you're assuming that you're going to have big machines to go and get stacks of wheat and corn. Like, I don't know about that. So shine lasts forever. It only ever gets better over time. And if you can churn out bunches and bunches of shine and put it in bottles and jars, I reckon that's going to be way more tradable than food. At a pinch, you can run an engine on it. At a pinch, if it's 90% pure.
That's sacrilege. You shut your mouth.
I know, but tobacco. See, tobacco seeds. I don't know if you guys have ever actually seen tobacco seeds, but
tiny.
They're the most amazing seed. They're so tiny. Like you get in a handful of seed, there would be enough to sow like 2 acres more. So as far as a seed that you want to travel the world with, like just put enough in your hand or in your pocket to be able to plant a field with, it's the most amazing seed. Like to do the same thing with corn, you'd need like two big bushel bags, and yeah, if you can grow tobacco and you can cure it and sell it, there will be a line of people out the door. And the same thing for weed. Like those 3 are going to be your top 3 trading currencies. Like forget about silver and gold. Like people already now swap silver and gold for these things, like how do you think it's going to be at the end of the world?
I don't think
I got to
tobacco
disagree
is
with you
big as
there,
it used to
Eminem.
be.
In the U.S., at least, I think shotgun shells are going to be probably the most valuable thing as society breaks down the way I'm thinking it will.
Yeah, but the thing is with shotgun shells is like they're not very portable for if you need a big purchase. Like if I got to carry like a crap ton of shotgun shells, you're basically a giant ammo pickup at that point. Like the
Well,
more currency you need to
thing
buy
that I
something,
would,
the more targetable you're going to be.
the one thing I would say is you want to look to history and also current events to try and predict the future. So if you look into areas that are remote, that are semi-tribal, and I'm talking particularly about to Australia's north, which is Papua New Guinea, one of the most highly prized tradable items is shotgun shells. So you're exactly right. And one of the reasons is a shotgun is an area weapon. You've got a much greater chance of being able to shoot something with it. You've got a variety of projectiles all in the one, case. And you can make a shotgun out of 2 pieces of water pipe in any village in about half an hour. There was actually a really, really interesting guy who was a American Special Forces trainer,
and he actually made a commercial version of exactly that style of slam fire rifle. I saw it in one of those Forgotten Weapons programs. But yeah, his theory was this: if he had 30 guys all with a single shotgun, if he surrounded a car and shot it, then he just took the weapons from the people inside, and then he just upgraded every time. So it was just that typical guerrilla fighting where you're just taking off your enemy. Well, all you
Well,
need
in World
is
War
a single
II,
shot.
that's how they liberated the Philippines. Is the Allies would fly over and drop those very type of weapons to the natives in the Philippines, and the Japanese couldn't hold it because every freaking man jack had a gun before they had bows and arrows.
And that's the
Polynesians in
reason why I
particular-
would say, and if you look at in Papua New Guinea, a shotgun shell is a single shotgun shell is basically the equivalent. You can trade it for 2 or 3 days guiding, food for like 2 or 3 people for a day or two, fresh meat, fresh fish, like as much as you can carry for a single shotgun shell. That's how valuable they are.
Yeah.
Which brings
And
us
the
to reloading.
other thing about
Sadly, I do not know how to make
shotgun
smokeless powder.
shells is especially if you dip them in wax or something. Well, you can reload them, but the other thing, they're waterproof, so you can paddle down rivers. They're going to be fine. So I think 12 gauge shotgun shell, standard 2 3/4. I think that's right up there with your top tradable items.
Yep.
Well, we have to learn for what was the hardest thing that we couldn't get to reload bullets. It's the primer. It's the primer. So until there's a better way of developing primer, like if anything we learned from COVID is this: if you ever want to make your own bullets, if prices ever stabilize again, like you guys are gonna have to stockpile on primers because they're damn near impossible to get once they're out of stock, and they're very expensive.
And going back to what you were saying about shotgun shells, is it's pretty easy to knock out a primer with any old nail out of a shotgun shell and tap in a new one. And it's also pretty easy to make your own propellant. It's not that hard. And if you've got,
I don't know how to make smokeless powder.
Lee, well, you can't make smokeless is different because it's nitro powder, so it's different. But to make black powder, I mean, people made black powder at home on the frontier. It's not hard. Just look up history and you'll find how to make it. It's not hard at all. So, I mean,
it's just
the advantage is that you don't have to go to the same problem that they did for a lot of the chemical components. You can buy it pretty much off the shelf.
Chris Mitchell, are you talking about
you fuckers? Sorry, but you guys do not know how lucky you are, man. In Australia, we need a license for an airsoft gun.
What?
Right? You know, like plastic, it shoots plastic pellets. You know, like we call it a gel blaster. We need a license for that. Do you know why? Because it looks like a gun.
Well, your country also has. Weren't you guys doing like concentration camps too at one point? With COVID, like
they were
I feel really
COVID
bad
camps.
for you guys.
Yeah, COVID. COVID health camps. Well, it's really frustrating because, you know, I mean, I've lived here my whole life, and now basically I despise my country. I wouldn't say despise it. It's just sad to see, but it's just the way it's got to go. Like TFM was right when he said that the world's just got to go through this process, and we've got to come out the other side of it, and it's just the way it's got to be. So,
and it's really sad,
yeah,
because
I've accepted it. I'm moving on.
You know, because back in the 80s, you know, Australia it was based.
Well, they took the guns away.
You know, and then in the last 20 years, Australia has turned into a fucking communist state.
Well, the thing is, I can tell you the reason why. It's because they want the World Economic Forum and the World Bank's money. When you need money,
well, hang on. You guys forgetting something. You know how there's that, like, there's an old song, I can't remember what it's, and it's like, and it came out of Africa. Well, where did the UN come from? Well,
United
like,
States.
You got to arguably, the UN, United Nations, was really the start of the majority of this bullshit. Okay, so where did the UN come from? Come from Australia. It's an Australian idea.
Yeah, but the UN was done by Woodrow Wilson, probably the worst president the United States has ever had.
Well, the UN, Woodrow Wilson had the League of Nations,
which is basically what it would have.
And then the League of Nations failed after World War One,
because we didn't get a part of it. Because we didn't. If we put it this way, if the League of Nations would have been the UN, if the United States Congress didn't have balls and say, you know, screw yourself. But what you got to understand something. What does America export? And it exports one thing across the planet. It's feminism. That's the only thing we export.
Guns.
Any kind of country that takes money from the UN, because we're actually the muscle of the UN, you're gonna have to have feminism, and then that's gonna kill your culture. And that's what we did to Australia, sadly. So, as an American, I apologize. I apologize to you guys, because you guys got screwed over just like the United States citizen got screwed over.
So the League of Nations actually did some really good things. They separated all the Muslims and the Hindus in India, and that probably prevented a war. They separated the Greeks and the Turks. That probably prevented genocide between those two people.
Yeah, but genocide, it just prolonged the genocide. The worst people of them all was probably the British, because they just made borders the way they wanted to make borders, and then that basically caused everybody into the shit show we have today. Like, the way the British decided to carve up the Middle East and carve up the rest of the world really screwed up a lot of people, because you group people that should have never been grouped together in the same country just for political means, and bam, like, you get the problems we've been dealing with for the last 300 years has been all due to the damn Brits.
Well, I think the generally genocides happen when you have like two or a minority within a majority country. So the multiculturalism they're pushing now, I think that's setting us up for like one of the biggest bloodbaths the world will ever see.
Well, there's two ways of looking at multiculturalism. That's one way, and the other way is the more groups you have, the more you're going to infight and not worry about focusing on the government. So, for example, like if you had no groups in America and everybody wasn't fighting each other, who would we fight? We'd be going after the politicians. We'd be focusing on the politicians every single day. The fact they want us divided, the more groups that are divided, that means the more we're going to fight between each other and not focus on what the government's doing. So government by nature wants to have as many groups as possible, because the more you're separated, the least amount of power you have, and the more way you're going to focus on someone else and not me. It's just a giant giant deflection.
So you see multiculturalism as a tyrannical play?
Oh, it's always been a tyrannical play. Anytime there's been using multiculturalism, they use that to control the majority and the minority. So, for example, in America, the majority right now, and it's going to change in probably the next two generations, because it was 80% of Americans, now it's down to 60%, but it's white people. So what do you do if you want to control white people? You have the minorities, and you have Hollywood demonize white people. Excuse me. And by demonizing white people, you put white people on the back burner where they can't react to a situation, and now they're humbled, and now they can't, speak out and all that crap. And now they might be the majority, but they have no say and no power. And now they're focused on other groups. Instead of saying white people would have been in charge, they would have been focusing on the government and said, you know what, you better be doing this because we're the majority. So that's the reason. Multiculturalism is always going to be the tool of your enslavement, because they're going to just use the minority and the majority to fight each other and let the government do whatever the hell it wants to do.
Sounds like
when I was younger, we used to have the melting pot, where we were all blending the best parts of everybody into one culture, and we didn't have these race riots. I lived in a pretty good time growing up. We had, before, when I was a little bitty baby, they had race riots in like Watts in Los Angeles, but that was not something that happened all the time. Anytime somebody did something wrong, a cop shot a black guy, that didn't happen.
Yeah, but
we have become balkanized, and a lot of that has, come out of the communists coming up through the intelligentsia and then going back to their communities and preaching hate.
Yeah, but look at the way history repeats it. Look at the way history repeats itself. Okay, you have the 60s and 70s, which would be what we are today, where that's the race riots and all the craziness between the races. What did that lead into in the 80s? A giant push into conservatism. And the conservatism got pushed, basically, the 90s was the change into the counterculture and going into the democratic policies. Then you had a little push into conservatism in the early 2000s, then it went hard left, and then this cycle repeats. So if you look at history, right now we're in the 60s and the 70s right now. And the next bit, you can already see the counterculture already happening. The push is conservatism. Like, you can see it happening right now with the Supreme Court. Like, who would have thought Roe versus Wade at this point would have been canceled in our culture? I didn't see that coming. I mean, I wanted it to happen, but I didn't see it coming. So the way the culture is swinging, it's going more conservative. So knowing this, you can take some idea of how to plan your groups now, and how to, use this information to take advantage of economic news coming in and all that other stuff. Because what happened in the 80s, we had a giant growth. We had to deal with the Carter years of what do we have in the Carter years? Massive stagflation in the 70s. Like, literally, we were repeating ourselves. So my whole point is, focus on how awful the Carter years were. We had what do we have? A gas crisis. You couldn't get gas in gas stations in the 78 and 79. You had to wait a mile. You had to wait a mile to get gas. And then all that damage and problems that created bad times. And what was the good times? The 80s, when you had like Miami Vice and the economy just exploded. The end of the Soviet Union, all this great stuff was happening. And then you had the malaise of the 90s, and then the chaos of the early aughts, and then the 2010s and 2020s has been basically utter just collapse, and it's going to cause bad times again, and then we're going to go back into good times again. So knowing this, focus on what worked in the 70s. So how do people make money in the 70s? They did CDs, they did bonds. And we haven't done, no one's been focusing on this stuff because we haven't had to, because we had, 40 years of dealing with, good times in the economy wise. And then everybody, put it this way, everybody that had went through bad times, they're probably retired at this point. You had to be basically just starting your career and you're probably right about to retire. Those are the people that understood what bad times were financially. There's nobody right now, for the most part, has lived through bad times other than like people like Warren Buffett. But other than that, not many people have lived through bad times, and that's the whole thing.
So the thing I got to disagree with you on is, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, things usually go back and forth between conservatism and liberalism, but we're at the very end of our demoralization process from whoever they are. And the last thing they're going to go for on the Maslow hierarchy of needs that's going to destroy us is going to be our food and shelter. We're not going to own the homes that we live in, and we're not going to have enough food to live on. At that point, we'll probably just kill each other.
True. But why do you, I mean, that's the whole purpose of homesteading. It's like you see this coming, so you're taking proactive steps to secure your, financial and, financial and food story for the rest of your life, because you wouldn't take this hard road of going homesteading if you didn't feel like this was a must. Like, homesteading is not an easy life. Like, this isn't the easy road. This is definitely the hard road. And
you have to understand the population density kind of determines the geographical what it can sustain, if you will. The cities can't sustain themselves. And it's getting harder and harder to get farther away economically out of a city. The population densities, was what's going to cause causality of the amount of hardship and the shit hits the fan situation.
Yeah, but
absolutely.
But the thing is, the city, like prime example, New York City has 3 days worth of water, of clean water, and maybe 4 or 5 days worth of food. Once that happens, once there's no fresh water and no fresh food, and no one's going in the cities, literally the population in the city is going to be cut in half. You're literally going to have the people with the guns taking out anybody that doesn't have guns. Because you're going to have it's all going to be like, you're going to have Bloods and the Crips on the streets. It's going to be gang warfare. Everybody's going to basically be paying little like fiefdoms, little mafia sections. Like, you're going to have like Little Italy's going to have its own mafia. You're going to have like,
it already does.
I know, but they would actually be political power at this point, because they're going to have the guns, they're going to have the ammo, they're going to have the influence.
Well, you think about the Democrats' cry about tribalism now. Wait until the food runs out and see what rules the country at that point.
Well, it's always been that case. Cities are always paper tigers. They might serve the good of consolidated power and economic wheelhouse, but they are a paper tiger in the sense that they can't self-sustain themselves. The rural areas are already poor. They already have the connections. They already have the food source. If they go to bad times, they're prepared for that. They've been living bad times their whole entire life. They have the connections. They have the food. If the city says tomorrow, you know what, we don't need your milk anymore. Well, you know what? Maybe I just don't grow that many cattle this year. Maybe I'll slaughter those cattle and trade them for goods. And instead of having 100 head, I'm going to downsize to 50. But my life doesn't change that much. You just made my life easier. I'm still going to survive. I still got milk. I still got cows. I still got beef. I could sell my cows for the grain. I'm good. I'm not in the city where, I'm a freaking underwater basket weaving major that has a septum piercing and blue hair and never had to. I'm like a barista. Never had actually had a real job that I actually had to do something, and I don't know. I'm so disconnected from my food source. I have no idea even how to frickin' fish. And then shit hits the fan. What's that person gonna do?
Die.
Person's gonna die.
Pretty much.
I've seen documentaries.
No, I'll tell you
of,
what's going to
like-
happen.
Who's that? Did I talk over somebody?
Oh, sorry, it's the delay.
Tell us what's going to happen.
Well, I saw documentaries of edited out parts where they interviewed people in like poor parts of Appalachia and Virginia and up in the hills. They said, "How are you handling the depression?" And they were like, "What? What are you
Yeah,
talking about? We don't know what you're talking about. The depression, people have it hard and everything." They're like, every day is like the next day down here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
The other
They
thing
had
is,
no clue anything was going on in the world around them.
I
But
gotta
that's-
agree with that. Poor communities are perpetually poor. The rich people will pay them as little as possible. So if the economy's doing great or bad, they don't see a difference.
what's also it's opulence in the sense that if you're in a rural community, you don't value the internet so much. You're valuing, I'm going to go out into my neighbors and we're going to, play cards or we're going to play some board games. You're making the inner group dynamics. You're making the friendships, you're making the connections, you have the tools, you have the resources. You're living a much simpler life. If I'm living in the city, I have to pay the internet. I have to pay for an HOA. I have to pay for, going out to the restaurant because I don't have the next grocery store is 20 minutes out. I have to pay for sewer. I have to pay for, farting outside tax. You know what I mean? Like you're getting, by having the glorious honor of living in a city, you have to pay all these extra taxes and fees that someone in the rural area doesn't have to pay. And then you wonder why you have no money and then that you're enslaved. Yet the person that you call as poor probably lives a much richer life than you'll ever live.
Well, let me ask
I can
everyone
tell you
this question.
exactly what's going to happen in the cities. Until December, I lived over in Ukraine. And less than 100 years ago, in 1933, they had a famine. When the Soviets took over the Russian Empire at the time the Soviets took over was a net food exporter.
Yep.
They were the breadbasket of Europe. And when the Soviets took over and they started doing their 5-year plans, once they consolidated power, they too messed with the food supply. They kicked off all the small farmers who knew how to grow those bumper crops and surplus crops, and they put in these big communal farms full of politically correct people that didn't know how to grow, and there wasn't enough food for people. And since the Ukrainians had sided with the Tsar in the War of Succession and the Russian Civil War, the Ukrainian people, even though they had the richest farmland in the Soviet Union, were starved to death. 13 million people died. They were eating each other on the streets of Kiev. If you fell down dead, people would come out of their apartment buildings and carve you up for dinner. Less than 100 years ago, in a first world country.
Yeah,
the same shit can happen here. And don't kid yourself.
There's
Don't kid
picture
yourself if you think
documentation
it
of
can.
this. There's picture documentation of this. I've seen it.
He used to go to college with a guy from Kiev, and that so scarred his culture. Like he was kind of like looking at me like I had 3 heads or something because I threw away a little bit of food. They just don't waste food because that was so traumatic.
Well, you also appreciate stuff more. So like America is so opulent that how many times you go to a restaurant and you see these people have like 2 bites of their burger and they throw the damn rest of the burger away. If someone from like Somalia saw what we actually did with our food, it's a freaking disgrace. Like half the people don't take their food home; they just throw it out. It's just going out to eat. I want a couple bites, and then I throw. And
I clean my plate.
oh, I know, but I'm just saying. You go to most restaurants, you see the amount of food that people just throw away is insane, and that will change in a heartbeat once like the supply chains go away. Like it takes 3 to 5 years to grow a cow from like calf to slaughter. Like
2 years.
Well, I'm just saying the full process. Like I was hearing some cows it takes like 7 years for some cows.
No, 2 years.
I like my
Yeah.
yearlings.
Yearlings are the tastiest, I find.
But like all this other
But-
stuff, they're
but
saying
seriously-
avocados take 7 years to grow. Like people don't realize if you're not cooking something, the supply chain is what's going to kill you. Logistics is always a bitch. Like that. Armies have died from logistics, and societies have fallen because of logistics. That's going to be our tool of enslavement, and our greatest weakness in America is basically what's called at just in inventory, and with logistical problems. That's going to be the reason why prices are going to be skyrocketing so much, because there's nothing in inventory. And there's nothing to stock it with, so prices are just going to be out of freaking control.
Well, you're going to see neo-feudalism.
I
You're going to see
disagree.
people have to be self-sufficient.
Yeah. I'll just put my hand up, because I know the delay is a bit bad. So yeah, sorry if I'm interrupting.
I don't see a damn hand.
You know, I've been looking at the different genres of movies over the years, and the new
You don't have the same effect
factor
as
of
hamsters.
the 80s, the 90s, and the big one about what the question. It's a fair question. What are these people going to do when there's no food? And they'll do all the normal things that people in a really big crisis do. They'll boil up grass, they'll shoot all the animals. And this is the thing a lot of people say is, when the shizzy hits the nizzy, I'm just going to go and shoot all my own animals. Well, if you look back to history in the Depression, around New York State, from the stuff that I've read, deer population almost went to zero. Like there was just nothing, and there was no birds. They were shooting everything that flew or walked or whatever. Now, majority of people don't have that drive or that technology to be able to go and get a deer from the field or whatever, but it will get shot out. And when it gets shot out, well, you've only got to look back to history. What have people done in crisis scenarios where they've been, in this instance, on the side of a mountain in the Andes with a bunch of dead people, and they were alive? It took them less than 24 hours to decide to start cutting up pieces of dead people, drying them on the wings of the plane, and eating them. Less than 24 hours. So that thing about, the Romans, that thing about the Romans, about 3 days without food and there'll be blood in the streets. Yeah, they weren't talking about fighting. They were talking about people killing each other and eating them. Like, it's not unusual in history. You've only got to look at recently I can't remember, it was only about 2 years ago, one of the conflict zones, I think it was the Middle East, where there was a local fatwa that was released where they said it's okay to eat pieces of dead people because we're in such dire circumstances. This happens. So when you say, like, what's going to happen to people, have you ever put 2 rats in a cage with no food and no water? You come out the next day and there's like half a rat. That's what's going to happen. And it's just going to be king rat
it'll just be the biggest, fattest rat at the end.
Well, I think it's
And
worse than
those people
that
will be hard to
because,
deal with.
like in the past, people would do desperate things to stay alive, but now we have 3 generations of government dependence. Like, I can't tell you how morally bankrupt we as a society are. So when times get rough, I think you'll see unprecedented barbarism.
I couldn't agree with you more. But, gentlemen, we are over 3 hours. It is 1 o'clock in the morning here,
Oh,
and I've got to get up at
they'll
sunrise.
try and hold it together for a while. And
So let's have some final thoughts from you brothers. And there's a million more things we can
well, thanks
say
for
on
having
this
me on
topic.
anyway.
Hey, Maddie,
Yeah,
anytime.
thank you guys.
Bandit, been great. We're glad we busted your cherry.
Yeah.
Now get
All
your own
good.
damn
Thanks for having
StreamYard.
me. I wish I was feeling better, so I wouldn't be pausing every 5 seconds, hacking up a lung here. But I
Yeah.
appreciate you having me on.
Download yourself some StreamYard.
Yep,
I'm sure
I'm gonna have
that
to do
lots
that.
of people want to listen to you.
Yeah.
All right, will do.
Been a
You got
pleasure,
anything,
True
Andy?
Blood.
All right.
Yep.
See you, Bob.
No, just guys, get prepared because shit's coming down the pike. It might be good, might be bad, might be ugly. You don't know. It's just better to be prepared, in my opinion, because I don't see things getting any better before they get worse.
Oh, they're gonna have to get a lot worse before things get better. We're gonna have to go through, and it's really basically 2 options. It's either going to be authoritarian communism or authoritarian fascism. Those are the 2 avenues it's going to go down. Because people right now are so freaking weak that they're just asking to be ruled. They're like, "Daddy, just rule me." That's all people have been saying. Like people don't want to take responsibility for their lives as a whole. I'm speaking in general terms, not for you guys, but society people today just want to be told what they have to do, and they'll just do what they want. So they're going to be ruled either by a fascist or a communist. It's just that's our future, and it's gonna take a lot of people, a lot of convincing to make me think otherwise. Because people are just so freaking weak today. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
Well,
If I can
the
just
military junta.
say one thing before you go, if you still got me,
Yeah.
One thing you guys should definitely check out is there's a video called Ray Dalio, Principles for Dealing with a Changing World Order. That'll give you a really, really good idea about where we're going in the next 10 to 20 years. And it's a great video. It's about 40 minutes long. And yeah, really worth watching if you're into trying to predict the future. It'll really help you see exactly where we're at and where we're going. It was Ray Dalio, Principles for Changing with a New Economic Order.
Can you throw the link
for
to
it, it's on
that up
YouTube.
in chat?
Anyway,
Maddie, can you throw the link of that
try.
up in chat?
Yeah, I'll do a search. I'll just try now. Anyway, thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on too. I'm
All right.
Yeah,
Truth
thanks,
Anchor.
guys. Thanks, chat.
Never met you before, Truth Anchor, but it's been a pleasure having you too.
Likewise. Thank you, sir.
Hey, Anchor.
So I'm going to be shutting the stream down here as soon as MGTOW Maddie throws that link up. And I'd like to welcome some latecomers. We got Father Saunders.
Yep, give me a minute.
Are you bringing
Chris mentioned
Saunders
it
in?
back.
Saunders ain't country, goddammit.
Well, if we bring Saunders in, he'll just start running his mouth and we'll never get out of here.
He's
That's
like
a joke.
He's like that neighbor you take a beer down
Hang
to
on.
talk to him, and then they start pulling out beer and you can't get away from them.
But at least they're giving you beer.
That's what I'm saying, and you just gotta walk home. Well,
Sorry about
that was another
yawning.
thing about networking and community. Guys, I moved down here. I just walked down the road a little ways with a couple of beers, and just because he was mowing his grass. All you gotta do, he's gonna say, "Get the hell off my property," but you never know till you try. And I was about dumbfounded. He's like, "Yeah, I hope some asshole didn't move in down there." I said, "Well, I don't know about all that."
Nope. You're a special kind of asshole, Indy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the reason I'm a monk, because you got
Now,
people like Riggs running around.
yeah, now to actually fit in most places in the country, you have to be an asshole. You got to be fucking hard, because if you're not, they're not going to respect you.
Yeah, you gotta have a little bit of skin on you. You know what I mean?
So, all right, Midtown Maddie. The goddamn
Yep,
bots
sorry,
here.
bro. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, I just banged that link through there, but
It
it'll
just says
give you a
Ray
really
Dalio.
good I'll put the link in the private chat on the
Why?
StreamYard link.
Just put it in the general chat.
I know I did.
Let me see if I can grab it out of
I
private chat.
put the link in the chat as well. Hang on, I'll put it in there again. But the thing that he's really astute with, which is there's going to be a rise of a new power, Eric Zombro. That US is going to be on, and now the new question is whether it's going to be China with the falling population against India, and I personally think it's going to be India. India is going to be the new major sort of rising power with all their.
I think you may be right.
You know,
we'd have to ask Unwanted Contriver about that.
People to use things, and they've got a lot of good natural resources, a lot of good area. So,
but thank God they're hopelessly
China, who's going to be
incompetent.
the top dog 3 anyway.
All right,
there's enough of them though. You get enough of them. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, gentlemen, thank you very much, and
anyway.
Peace out.
Thank you. See you
Mom.
guys.